And I think we're live. Yep.
Nice.
All right. Guys, this is just a chill show. You know what I mean? Like, as you see, there's not even a fucking intro. Now, if you want to join the panel, let me know and I'll send you a link. All right. This is an open panel. It's going to be too chaotic. So we're just going to do a private panel. But the chosen ones will be able to join us. So,
am I a chosen one?
Yes, you are. The chosen one.
Of course you are, brother.
Guys, I'm going to be in and out, by the way. So, if anything happens, just let me know on Discord. If you want somebody to join, well, you guys can invite whoever you want. I think you can just get the link.
Actually, I might have to drop off here and there, but I could stay as long as the show goes.
Yeah, all right.
Alrighty. Now, did you check out with Chief and those guys? Might be late for him, but just talk a couple of things. What's going on right now in the boxing scene? Some news.
I don't even know what's going on.
We're in the dead season right now of boxing.
Yeah, there's some couple interesting topics though. Like for instance, Wilder. I don't think he's going to continue fighting. I think he's going to retire. I think that'll be announced. I heard he said it. The Lomachenko talk. There's a lot of a couple of nuggets going on we could cover. Recognize.
What do you think about? You've been saying that from the beginning. You thought Wilder was going to retire before.
Yeah. I said that months before the fight, and again, the whole reason why was, okay, you put yourself in his position. I think going back as far as Luis Ortiz, he's been pulling down in excess of over $20 million a fight. Say, let's round it up to around 25 to 30 million. He's probably made at least for the last two Fury fights. I know because it was 20 million. That's right. He got 20 million for Ortiz, Brazil. So starting in Brazil, he got 20 million. Then Ortiz 20 million, and then at least 20 for Fury, and I believe 30 or 60 combined for the last two. So, I mean, just that's over $100 million for the last four fights. Yeah,
for a guy who put his standards as he just wanted to make some journeyman money, as he put it. Just to, I guess, help his daughter. Remember that?
Yeah. I think those days. I think he's the fast dad. Yeah. So now he's got new girlfriends.
You think about it from Wilder's standards, right? From where it began, he exceeded that.
Oh,
he exceeded that in terms of money.
Absolutely. And have you ever seen anybody? I mean, let's be honest. With that minimal amount of skill, I mean, if anything, Heyman. Let's say this somebody that obviously selective matchmaking, but if someone would have showed you a tape of Wilder sparring 5 years ago or a Wilder fight and say this dude's going to be pulling down 30 million a fight, you'd be like, what? Come on. So, I mean, that if anything, Heyman at least did get him paid. But now here's the situation, recognize. If you were him, now picture him, right? You become accustomed to a lifestyle. Obviously, right? Big house, cars, everything's nice. But then also it's the same now. Think about this. So if he goes to fight, regardless of who it is, even if it's a softest touch, a typical, 2 or 3 rounder, he's going to knock the dude out. Putting himself through that grueling training camp, right? Putting himself through everything he has to put himself through to get ready for a fight. And now the whole time, all right, but you, dude, if you were doing it, let me ask you, if you were, what everybody has to go through for training camp, and you just got 30 million, 20 million for the last 4 or 5 fights. Imagine now doing it for probably 2, maybe 3 tops, and plus upside of the pay-per-view, which we can talk about that too. Pay-per-views are going down. Listen, the economy's, I'm not telling anybody anything anybody doesn't know. Look at the shelves. Look at the gas prices. People, it's not going to be long before that, extra money doesn't even worth as much. And I think the first thing that goes is frills, like pay-per-views. So let me put it over to you, dude. Tell me what you think about all that.
No, you're right. It makes perfect sense. I mean, you think about it. You got Wilder, who comes from Alabama, right?
Yep.
If you make like $60,000 to $70,000 in Alabama, let's say you're a regular working guy and you make that kind of money, you could live good in Alabama. You could live a good life. Good. Alabama, the state of Alabama is a beautiful state. I've been there a few times with some family and just go on a visit, and it's a very kind of like a country lifestyle. So assuming that Wilder saved a lot of his money and his expenses are not that bad, assuming that he still lives there, or he lives like, a state next to it, he can live a good life without, boxing again, getting beat up by like top level guys. Because I think that's what's going to continue happening if he was to fight, with the lack of motivation that he probably has now, losing. When you lose that bad, right? It takes something away from, your aura. We've seen it even happen with Mike Tyson. You can even see it with a guy who was very skilled, and pretty much had the sports world in his hands at one point. You saw that when he lost, the mystique of Mike Tyson left. And then you take all the other stuff that you said with the way the economy is going, and boxing is going to be affected by it as well. We already see it with the pay-per-view numbers. It might not be worth it for him. They say they offer him $10 million. I mean, yeah, it's still $10 million to fight some guy that he's not really motivated to fight, and the guy goes in there and whips his ass.
Right. In like, you're 100% right, Alabama, man, you can get fucking mansions down there for $500,000 that you would pay, Christ, in New York area or anywhere in the Northeast, you'd pay just ridiculous 3-4 times that. And I do believe he still lives in Alabama. I could be wrong on that. But here's the thing: the PBC right now, they're kind of a promotion without an island, right? I mean, even though people call them the isolation island. But Heyman, who does he have for an investor? He would have to get backers for that. Fox has already said straight up, look, you can pretty much see they're not putting up any money. Anybody who wants any real money right now is going on pay-per-view. The fact that Thurman Barrios is on a pay-per-view. Thurman Barrios is maybe think about it. They're both coming off losses. Barrios coming off a knockout loss in a division below him from a guy who came up, and now you're putting him in a welterweight on a pay-per-view. That thing's a dog that's not going to sell. And if he's promising these guys, listen, $1 million, say, because everybody gets guaranteed money going, up front. But if he's only giving Spence $1.7 million, what does he think he's going to give Thurman for guaranteed money? $750,000, $1 million tops. Then it'll be the 60% of a percentage of the pay-per-view. But if the pay-per-view doesn't sell, barely covers expenses, they don't get anything extra. It's, in my opinion, it's the chickens are coming home to roost, brother. That's what's happening. These money, Mickey Garcia getting $7 million for fighting fucking Vargas on DAZN. That's insane. I just think the chickens are coming home to roost.
Yeah, they're not. I can't imagine with those kind of paydays, the people involved, the promoters and everybody else involved, really getting anything back that's worth it. You know what I'm saying? Because remember, they got to pay people too. So I'm wondering, like, as a promoter, are you with the checks that you're writing, for the fighters, for the talent, are you getting anything in return? Is it worth it to put these, these set paydays for these guys and then put it on pay-per-view? I mean, because all that is a cost, right? Like,
of course,
I've heard you explain it plenty of times, and it makes perfect sense for anybody who has a decent IQ when it comes to business and money. It makes perfect sense. So you got to wonder to yourself if it's even worth putting up these fights anymore. And you got to wonder what the pay-per-view thing, the reason why it's still in play, the reason why they're doing this. It makes me wonder: is this the only way they can pay these guys? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, well, we had Fox had their 4th year, right? They had a 3-year contract with a 4th-year option. When Canelo, I believe Canelo Plant landed on Showtime, that told me right there Fox wasn't going to put in big money because they weren't going to pay what Canelo received. And I'm just curious who put up that money. I really am, because I can't see Showtime putting it up, although they have the money with their subscriptions. They get $11 million, pay $10.99 a month. Do the math. Those guys are pulling down big money. But if they don't, it's not even just Showtime. Okay, Showtime has like Steven Espinoza will have twice a year, probably gets an allotted amount of money for fights. They already released their programs, right? I mean, they did their schedule for this year. There's no extra money. So that's the reason why every fight coming forward, everything PVC has planned that's above Showbox level is going to pay-per-view. You have Charles Martin fighting fucking Luis Ortiz on pay-per-view. I mean, that's an insult, right? That's even if it's even at a cheap price point, that's an insult. That's basically what it is now. Is Heyman screwed himself? He did up, the $750 million, established all those relationships with those networks in the first 2 years of the PBC, buying all the time slots on the chance they were going to put on such a good product, pull down such big numbers, it was going to be financially feasible for these networks to then buy events off the PBC. They didn't buy any because all he fed them was trash. Listen, he's not a promoter. He made his bones in the boxing business. He's not a boxing guy. You need look at every great house, every good shop. Tom Brake has Bruce Trampler. The PBC had a guy when they first started was good, but I'm sure he can only have so much to say. But if you don't have guys who are on the ground getting the new talent, like the Davises, the two Davis brothers, right? They just signed with Top Rank, those blue chip brothers. Those kids are going to be fucking Xander Zayas. You know what I mean? With those guys with the PBC. What's his name's not with a lot of people, including myself, thought he was with the PBC. Boots Ennis. He's not. He's a Showtime fighter. He just fights under Showtime, but he's not signed to the PBC. So if you look at it, what, Joey Spencer? Chris Colbert? Outside of that, what do they got going forward?
I think that a lot of these up-and-comers have enough examples of what's been going on over there and are choosing not to sign with them, obviously.
Of course. No,
because
absolutely.
You got a choice, so they're looking at it as, what's the old guy? Guys like Bob Arum, even guys like Eddie Hearn, over the PBC. Because not only is PBC in a bad fight, their matchmaking makes no sense in terms of in these fights on pay-per-view. Then your career gets put on a standstill. I mean, look at these fighters. They're fighting like once a year. Keith Thurman hasn't had a fight in almost 3 years since he lost to Manny Pacquiao. And I want to say that fight was in 2019, right? Like in the summer of 2019. That's almost 3 years. Who wants to be in that position? These fighters. I don't want to be in that situation where I reach a certain level, and then at the peak of my career, where I could be earning the most money, I start fighting once every 2 years.
I know.
Fight a year,
I know. It's. I mean, I honestly, I'm surprised Keith even came back. Obviously, he needs the money. What's that, brother?
Yeah, he needs the money for sure.
Yeah, I would think, right? It's been over 2 years. It's just coming off losses. And the fact that they're going on pay-per-view tells you, I don't know. It's sad because when he first started, man, he had all that money, all those fighters. It could have been good. I mean, if he just had the right boxing people and he didn't try to control everything, because he did. He had he had the kid from New York there, the guy, Lou DiBella. He had some other, he has Tom. He has a decent boxing guy there now, but again, it depends on how much room they have, flex to, how much rope he gives them. I don't think he gives them much. I think he's a kind of control freak. But Heyman's in his 60s. I don't see him doing this shit until he's 90, like Bob, until his 90s. I don't see the end game. I mean, at best right now, even if he wanted to sell the PBC, really, what does he have? Although he does, again, it's all rumors, but all right, Broner's tweeting out, I want my money. Other fighters have said it too. And basically, it's not unusual for some guys. Well, say if you get a big payday, right? Recognize they're going to pay you $500,000. Mm-hmm. It's better for you to get $30,000 the night of the fight and defer the payments for tax reasons so you don't get hammered. But who sits on that money? So if that's Heyman's got a bank account, right? He's not supposed to like legally spend it, but he's sitting on it. I don't know. It's just a lot of, and there's no transparency. There's zero
I think I know what's
transparency, and that's
going on
always
there. You
bothered me.
got somebody tweeting out. You said Broner
Oh
tweeted
yeah,
out.
blown a few guys. I want my money.
Yeah, I have a feeling I know what's going on there. So they give them, like you said, they give them these deferred monies that work out for them in the beginning, right? I pay you 50,000 instead of 500,000, and
Yep.
then with the intent of paying you as time goes on, and you don't have to pay that much taxes on it. I almost get the feeling that there's also taking off the top while giving you money.
Of course.
It's the oldest trick in the work, man. It's the oldest.
And these guys aren't used to, like, Broner said, I mean, this isn't enough to live. I forget what he said. He gets like 2,000 a week or something like that. I mean, so yeah, if he's deferring out with all these guys, I don't know. I think after he's out of the business, I think eventually, I don't know how long their non-disclosure is binding for. I would imagine once Heyman's out, you're going to hear a lot of things. Once he's out, I guarantee you're going to hear a lot of fighters complaining. Right now, they can't because he can and will sue the dog shit out of them.
Are you guys discussing Al Gaiman?
Yes, we are. Who's this? Hey, what's going on, kid?
Yo, what's going on?
How you doing, brother? Who else is on the phone with us?
Al Gaiman, he's a scam artist, and he's the biggest scam artist in the sport of boxing. I mean, listen, his contracts, signing his fighters is kind of like slave contracts, bro. Like, I heard, his contracts one time, and it sounded like they're his slaves, bro.
I mean, yeah, in a way, yeah. From what I'm hearing, it sounds that way. Excuse me. It sounds like he's signing. Well, whenever you can't speak, and I'm sure that a lot of people have contracts that feel really good with what's in it, and there's certain things they're not allowed to talk about. But from what Jimmy has said in the past, and now what's going on with someone like Broner, then there was the Floyd Mayweather. I believe he might be saying that there's some beef with Al Heyman not paying him. I don't know what that payment's about, but there was some beef there. There was some talks that Mayweather may not be happy. Yeah, they sound like slave contracts. Now Mayweather's a different ballgame, right? Because he's more of a partner than he is a client of Al Heyman. I mean, he's a client, but when you're dealing with somebody with that status, they're basically like. But you can still fuck over a partner. That doesn't mean you can't fuck somebody over. That's on Mayweather's level. You know what I'm saying?
Evening,
What's up,
guys.
Jimmy? I mean, what's it? Shit.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello?
Somebody was calling, and they
Yes, yeah, that screwed me up too. Who's this? Somebody else just joined the call right now. Who's this?
Me, Chief.
Chief, how you doing, brother? Merry Christmas, buddy. How was your holidays?
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. It was fantastic. It was
excellent,
wonderful.
Brother.
We didn't do much. It was everything I thought it would be.
Yep, they're calling again right now.
They're calling what?
Oh no, somebody's calling through right now.
Oh, okay.
On the back. Yeah, you guys. But so that's good, man. Everybody happy and healthy.
Yes, and how about you?
Oh, every day above ground's a good day, my brother. That's the way I look at it.
That is true.
So any news amongst boxing you heard that you want to get off your chest? Have you heard anything interesting or?
I just came in on this whole slave contract thing to PBC, but yeah, I was talking to my friend about that, about how these are lifelong contracts. It seems like, because the only time it's not one is in the case of Porter, who they got rid of because he wasn't bringing them anything else. They had nothing else to do with him. Like you pointed out, Jimmy, there was nothing PBC related anywhere in the ring or anywhere else in the Porter-Crawford fight. They cut that man loose. They may have negotiated on his behalf for the fight, but that was it, because they are a representation. But they had no promotion. They let him go. And that may, no one's really spoken to this, but that could have had something to do with his retirement, because his home, since he was bought out from Golden Boy by PBC, let him go. What else has he got to offer? He just lost to Crawford. Bob's not going to sign him to anything big. Matchroom's not rushing to sign him, and all he's going to be is cannon fodder. So these are lifelong contracts of these guys and according to a source from a different YouTube site that I don't remember off the top of my head, a reliable source in professional boxing has basically said Al Heyman has been paying out more than these fighters bring in, and that's why everything's going to pay-per-view now. And it's a losing concept, because when you look at Top Rank, you have Bob Arum is the owner, you have a CEO, you have a director of operations, which is Carl Moretti, you have a line of people in a corporation-style atmosphere, and in PBC, you've got Al Heyman, who doesn't do interviews, doesn't release anything to the press. He got 2 cronies that are always in the ring before after each fight. They don't speak to the press or speak for the fighter either. The fighters speak for themselves. These guys are uneducated. They're not brought along like Mayweather was slowly. And they don't have the natural charisma that Ray Leonard has. And so it's like you're watching backyard brawls, not skill-wise, but interviews afterwards. It's almost like the principal's interviewing some kids in a backyard brawl, and when they're done, you sound like, these highly uneducated people are speaking a different language when they're done, because no one's brought them around to train them for anything professional. Well, because nothing organized from PBC is coming about.
This is not Al Heyman's first rodeo. If you didn't know, Al Heyman was in the music business.
I know exactly who Al Heyman is.
We know that part. But I just want to say, salute to everybody in the panel. Happy, merry belated Christmas. Good to be on, man. I guess it's the final live stream of the year, right?
Well, one of them definitely, right? Merry Christmas to you, brother. Merry Christmas to you too.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas to you too.
I just wanted to add to what she was saying. It's like, they don't have really good media relations at all, man. I felt like Lou DiBella could have been that good front man, that good hype man for the PBC events, but after that meeting with DAZN, that basically just killed off the relationship, because Lou was just trying to get Deontay Wilder paid, and it's like those type of fights are 50-50, man. Like it could have brought those belts over on this side, who knows? But Al Heyman wasn't having none of that,
fired him for that after all those years.
Yeah. Because like when you delegate that responsibility to the fighters, and they're not good people person to me, because you ever hear the Charlo speak and it's like you feel like you're about to get stabbed? No disrespect, but like, you're about to get shit, but just talking to these dudes, because like they sound fucking wacko, and Tank and Spence, they sound dumb as fuck. It's like let the promoters talk their shit, and these guys are not promoters. These are fighters pretending to be promoters who have these bullshit like record labels like Man Down Promotions, Tank Promotion, whatever the fuck, or Lions Only. Fuck all that. You guys are puppets.
So let me piggyback off that for a second. You have some very valid points, but Bob says this himself. I say this about Bob because, as far as I don't know about the history of boxing, but in my lifetime, he's the longest running successful promoter. Don King may still be, with 1 or 2 fighters right now, but one of the guys that's still top of the food chain is Bob Arum, still now to this day at 90 years old. And he's been a promoter longer than I've been alive, and I've been alive over 40 years. So my point to getting back to the PBC is this. With the no structure going on, Bob once said that sometimes the fighter has to help promote. And what it means by that is look at Muhammad Ali, look at Oscar De La Hoya, look at, to an extent, Floyd Mayweather even after he left Bob, and look at Manny Pacquiao. Even Manny Pacquiao, even though he didn't talk much, his interviews, he had a way of attracting people through his kindness and then his savageness in the ring. And he wasn't afraid to get out to do media interviews, even though he wasn't one to be loud and obnoxious. He wasn't afraid to get in front of the camera and talk, even with his choppy English. George Foreman, same thing. He could turn on a crowd. If they don't have this charisma, the promoter has to work harder, but you can expect the fighter to not make as much money. Floyd wasn't doing that when Bob was his promoter. He was turning people off. He was not showing up for all the press conferences. He wasn't doing everything he was supposed to be doing on the fighter side to help sell anything. And what he mostly wasn't doing was impressing people in the ring, i.e. his last fight with Bob Arum was the Baltimore fight, where celebrities like Shaquille O'Neal, like Kobe Bryant, like, what's his name? Well, others.
I thought his last. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I thought his last fight was against with Bob Arum was Sab Judah.
No, his last fight was with Baltimore.
Oh, okay. I thought that was a Mayweather Promotions only.
Okay, let's say it was Mayweather Promotion. People still got up, walked out, booed, and didn't think they got their money's worth. So it still showed the fact he needed something else, and that was the win over Oscar De La Hoya to do that. But as to my recollection, that was still a top-ranked fight against Baltimore. So that was his last fight. And what did it sell? Under 400,000. He never broke over 400,000 until after he beat Oscar De La Hoya. And then that's when he finally got the limelight. So he was always talented. I mean, we don't all like him on this panel, but we all know he was talented. What he needed was something to get the media attention, because his personality wasn't selling the tickets, and Bob wasn't going to put in money to a losing effort. And Floyd was a losing effort. Because look at his pay-per-view. His pay-per-view against Gotti was good. Don't get me wrong. It was a high success for what you had to put into the fight. Zab Judah, pretty much same thing. Baltimore, no. And then he fights De La Hoya, but he leaves Bob Arum to do it. Highly successful. Dodges Shane Mosley, goes to make Ricky Hatton move up to 147, where all real boxing fans knew he wasn't effective at that weight class, and then he retires. But he still didn't get to that upper echelon level of 8-figure paydays until he fought Oscar De La Hoya. He couldn't get there without it, and Bob wasn't going to pay him $20 million for a fight that wasn't going to bring in $20 million. Not to mention, Bob's still got a company to run. He's got to sign new talent. He's got to manage guys. He's got to bring them up. He's got to put them on cards. He's got to put them on TV. This all costs money. He's not going to pay Mayweather all these tens of millions of dollars when he's not drawing in anything on the other side like Oscar was, like Manny was. And Manny didn't start doing that until after he beat Oscar.
Doesn't this support the idea that the only reason you should be on pay-per-view is that you have to sell a fight with a name, right? Of
right.
Equal value or someone close to that.
Right.
And when I explain this shit to people, they think I'm talking Chinese, and that's not the case. Because it's a lot of money to he really spoiled the market. You know that, right? With
he did.
With the $100 shit, and and it hasn't been the same since. Nobody really is invested in that. The people are through with paying for pay-per-view. They're rather you're one click away from stealing it. It's that simple. It's that easy.
And if you really think Tyson would have made those $30 million paydays if we could stream fights for free back when he was coming up, or when he first got out of jail, we'll put it that way, and he's fighting Peter McNeely and Buster Matthews was on free TV, but Frank Bruno in a rematch that we all know he wasn't going to win, or watch, what was that other guy, Bruce Seldon, take a dive, we would have streamed the crap out of that. And Don King would have been losing millions.
Right.
Multi-millions.
But at least those guys...
Fired a box. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, at least those guys, even Don King, as ruthless as he was, as greedy as he was, he wouldn't put fights on pay-per-view unless they were pay-per-view worthy. To me, a pay-per-view is when it is such a fight and such demand that the purses are calling for it. When you're just doing pay-per-views, because basically it comes down to this. When you have no network willing to finance the demands your fighters, your inactive fighters are demanding, that you have to expect the fans, because that's what he's doing right now. Hey guys, I'm going to expect you guys I'm going to finance through the fans. Well, you know what? The economy sucks. It's getting worse, and he's going to find out. And this is, again, chickens come home to roost. And the DAZN is dealing with a little of that right now too. Like, for instance, Haney. How the fuck are they going to match Haney? Nobody's going to pay that kid $3 million. No other promotion's going to pay him the kind, unless it's a crazy fight. I mean, he was getting $3 million a fight when he was still a fucking prospect, pretty much. Well, a contender.
What they're doing with some of them is similar to what Mayweather did for himself. Is there's a promotional fee by representing himself, and they're fronting the fight that he gets to keep that fee in addition to what he's already making, and that's where some of his paydays have come from. Just like Mayweather's $25 to $50 million paydays against Alvarez and his last fights on HBO, the $32 million he got guaranteed for everything that didn't exceed 1 million pay-per-view buys on Showtime, that was his promotional cut. It was his guarantee, but it was also his promotional cut because he was always in cahoots with a De La Hoya, a Golden Boy fighter from the time he fought Oscar to the time until all the way up to he fought Manny, who was a Bob Arum fighter. But everybody else was under Golden Boy promotion. So all these giant paychecks he was getting were his cut. It may have been his quote-unquote salary, but it was his promotional cut. And it was being financed by Showtime because he got signed by Showtime to fight specifically and exclusively just on Showtime. And for that, he was going to get a guarantee of $32 million. So they sponsored it. They funded it. Now, what fights back in the day that you and I were talking about, Jimmy, TV networks used to actually, I don't know the financial term, subsidize. They used to subsidize certain fights. Well, when the economy went bad in the late 90s, they stopped doing that. And that's why Friday Night Fights became only a news hub. And then background ambient noise fights after that because it was so-and-so who was 12-7 versus so-and-so other guy who was not even ranked at 13-3. And, hey, the winner might actually one day become a prospect. None of these guys were anywhere close to title contention guys, and people got sick of it. So the ratings went down. Why? Because the networks weren't subsidizing the fights, and promoters were having to put everything out of their own pocket. Guess what? That costs money. And that's the business side that I can't stand. But at the end of the day, the promoters have to make a profit so they can sign new talent.
The reason they're putting all these fights on pay-per-view is because they're trying to get back all of the money they invested in these guys. You know,
No, you're right.
because PBC don't know how to build up a fighter. They don't know how to build up fighters.
No, you're completely right. They don't, because every last person that's a mainstream fighter on the PBC card was under De La Hoya Promotions when they were brought up. And then when when Schaefer and De La Hoya had a rift, Schaefer let all the contracts expire, and Al bought them all up, and then he formed the PBC. So he didn't even build these guys up. He was just the advisor/manager to most of these fighters, while De La Hoya was the promoter. Oscar's the one that got them on HBO. Oscar's the one that got them on regular TV and everything else. Before the PBC started, he brought their names up. Once they became championship-level contenders and fighters, that's when Al bought them all up, and he made deals with network TV saying, and Jimmy, you said this before also, his original saying was, this is the end of pay-per-view, we're going to free TV. Now, what happens when these guys want to make $10 million a fight or more, like Ray Leonard used to, like De La Hoya used to, like Manny and Mayweather did? Well, how are you going to subsidize that? Because no TV network's going to pay Keith Thurman and Sean Porter $10 million a piece to fight each other on regular TV. They can't afford that. There's no ratings that are going to be high enough for that because no Soap Suds commercial is going to pay enough. They're not going to pay Super Bowl money for a fight like that.
You know what?
They're not going to pay that kind of airtime.
I think they spoiled these fighters.
They did. You're right.
They did. And
you're 100% right.
If you think about when Tito Trinidad went to HBO and was they were building up the fight between him and Oscar De La Hoya. I think it was in the same month or the same day. I think it was on the same month, different dates. You had Oscar De La Hoya who fought Obakar on that month, and you had Tito Trinidad fighting Pernell Whitaker on HBO, not pay-per-view. Okay, there was both fights were on HBO. Today's model, like even those fights, which were very good, when you match these names up, even today, at that period of their careers, it still would have been fights that you can definitely promote. By today's standard, they would definitely be on pay-per-view, but back then we got that if we had HBO, if we had cable, if you had cable, you had HBO, you would be able to watch that fight.
But HBO is owned by Time Warner, and at the time, the biggest company out there for entertainment was Time Warner. Time Warner had bought out AOL, so they had their own internet access. You paid memberships you paid subscriptions to HBO, you paid subscriptions to AOL at the time, you paid money and then of course they had all the money coming in from CNN, TBS, TNT, Cartoon Network, and multiple sources, plus the movies they released, and they released most of those Batman movies and made a buttload of money when they were out there. They had capital to work with. Showtime's never had anything like that.
Yeah, Showtime has always been the lower of the two when it comes to boxing.
And because
they
they didn't
always
have the
basically
pockets.
everything to HBO boxing.
They didn't have the pockets. Because if you remember when Trinidad fought Hector Camacho on an undercard to a Chavez fight, the combined purses were $300,000. Yeah. I think it was 200 to Trinidad and 100,000 to Camacho. Okay. All right. An undefeated 22-year-old knockout artist champion fighting one of the best mouths in boxing, and Hector Camacho, who was still on the very end of the beginning of that peak of the downfall, and he still had a sellable name. You could have had that fight in New York and sold a bunch of tickets in a heartbeat. They did not clear combined $500,000. Why? Because Don King doesn't do that. He doesn't waste money. He doesn't throw money out there for no reason. If he doesn't think it's going to sell the way he wants it to, he's going to put it where he knows it is going to work. And that's what he did. And it worked for him for a long time. Did he rob fighters? Yes. Was he sued successfully by fighters? Yes. Was Bob? Not that I know of.
But it was such a good model, such a good model. And again, I understand that they have money to play with HBO. It's such a good model to have that you put these, Trinidad and De La Hoya pay-per-view numbers was a huge success. I don't remember exactly the numbers, but
over $1 million. Well over $1 million. And for the 90s, that was huge.
It was the first non-heavyweight title bout to get like over $1 million.
Yep.
Right. I think they even did close to 2 million. Not 2 million, but close to it.
It was up there. It was well over $1 million.
But if you think about the model that they had, so what they did, as soon as Trinidad already had a name, people that follow boxing knew who Trinidad was. As soon as HBO got him, they right away put him in I think it might have been 2 fights.
It was Whitaker followed by Pineda.
Pineda. Yeah, matter of fact,
Pineda, I don't know which Pineda it was. It was the one that Kashizu knocked out. I don't remember if it was Hugo or Rafael.
I forget. Yeah,
Hugo. It was Hugo.
Hugo. So when he fought Pineda, it was on the same. I believe that was the same month. De La Hoya fought Obakar. I could be wrong about that. I don't have box rec in front of me.
I'll tell you this. I was underway at the time.
It was his 2 fights, his first 2 fights on HBO, and they were free. You can watch it. So everybody wanted to see Trinidad, De La Hoya.
Yep.
And so when they put it on pay-per-view, it did huge numbers, even though the fight itself wasn't the greatest fight. You know what I'm saying? So.
But how they built De La Hoya up like that, the same way Don King would build up Chavez. So Chavez and Greg Haugen are both on a regular fight on Showtime, and it was usually roughly around the time that Showtime would say, "Hey, you get 1 week free, and then you could subscribe, so everybody could watch it at a time." And so you had a double header of Haugen and Chavez, and then what happened later? The pay-per-view was Haugen and Chavez. That was a Don King model. What HBO was copycatting off of. Let me finish real quick, Jimmy. Is they were doing something similar, like you were saying. Recognized is they were putting guys out there at this around the same month to lead up to the big pay-per-view fight down the road. When De La Hoya fought that Frenchman Carpentier, what fight came after that? If I remember correctly, it was probably Wilfredo Rivera, because that was supposed to be a build-up fight with Terry Norris on the undercard to a build-up fight between him and Terry Norris, which fell through. So then what they do after that, they put him in against another, I can't remember who it was, but then after that was the Corte fight. So it was like every other fight was close to being an HBO followed by a pay-per-view until roughly around the Corte fight followed by the Trinidad fight. De La Hoya had gotten so big to where they couldn't pay him off of regular HBO anymore. He had to be on pay-per-view, but he drew the numbers. It was worth it. It was an investment. They put him on pay-per-view because people were going to go buy it, and he did what Mayweather did. He fought near Mexican holidays, somewhere near September, and people would buy it.
Well, I was gonna. I just wanted to bring up. I wanted to bring up something that just recently happened in the news. Excuse me, Errol Spence. Okay, I mean they worked their magic. Ugas complained enough because he had his mandatory. Stanizis, I can't pronounce his name. I'm sure someone of you guys know. Was it? What's that? Staniotis? Okay, this kid took Staniotis. Thank you, brother. This kid took step aside money to let Ugas fight Spence. So. All right, Crawford, remember the biggest, the cry was, well, you have to get a belt first. Crawford gets a belt to welterweight. Then it was, you have to come on this side of the street. Okay, he's a free agent. He can come fight on that side of the street. And so it's all primed, ready to go. But what does he do? The PBC, I don't know who did it, but somebody paid this kid money and he took it to force his fight. Now, here's the interesting part. First off, I look at just even proves to me Spence wants nothing to do with Crawford. Nothing. I never thought he did, and now I believe it more than ever. But here's the interesting thing. If you notice Heyman, what he does, he always matches his fighters against a Mexican or a Mexican-American fighter to pull down the extra numbers. If you look at Spence's, even the numbers that are overinflated, Steve Kim said he heard by upwards of 40%. I totally believe it. There's another thing remind me about the pay-per-view numbers, Mike Carpenter, I want to get into. But so you look at his numbers, he's gone down increments of 50,000 by what they've reported. Each of his he's had 3 pay-per-views. So now he's going up against Ugas, who is a talented kid. He seems like a nice kid. I don't mean to disparage him, but that kid's not a household name in his own fucking household. So this pay-per-view, now we're going to finally see what Spence's worth is. Now it's coming off that long layoff, the eye injury. He could be already a damaged fighter. So I personally don't think this fucking pay-per-view is going to do numbers. I think it's going to do worse than his previous 3. So that should be more of an indication that Heyman doesn't know what he's doing. Your numbers aren't supposed to go backwards in your prime. But now I just wanted to step on this one thing. You guys can talk about the Spence, whatever. Carpenter, remember for the longest time I was the one saying, without a doubt, I would bet my life, even though nobody could tell me for sure. But he was getting his numbers, remember, sources, and he was always the first, when PBC fights especially, to announce the pay-per-views, and that was the number. Whatever he said was the number everybody went with. In every article you wrote, it always said, numbers come from Mike. They would show his tweet or whatever. Okay, now here's the thing: if your sources are not the PBC, then somebody answer me this: why, when Davis Cruz that clearly tanked Richard Glacier was on media, a new media, saying, and he explained who his sources were, at 52,000 was the number. Now, my thing with Carpenter was this: if your source is just a source and you're not a fucking show for the PBC, why didn't your source tell you? Why did your source suddenly dry up when the information that you would have tweeted out? Because he knew he couldn't lie. He couldn't lie that hard. So even if he doubled the numbers and said it was 100,000, it's still a slap in their face. So am I wrong to say this is an absolute proves he's the fucking show for the PBC and all he's doing is getting the numbers leaked to him from somebody in there? Because the first time that they can't hide behind a fucking bullshit number, he goes dead silent. They've been doing that
they've been doing that since Floyd's first fight on Showtime. Back before Al was a frontman with PBC and he was still just an advisor, Heyman and Ellaby were doing this with the Floyd Mayweather Guerrero fight. There's not a single source out there that verifies that was $1 million pay-per-view by fight. Not a single one.
Who said it was now? Who did Showtime themselves tweet that out? Because if Showtime tweets it out,
no. You can pretty Showtime never released anything. People were questioning. But I'm just saying this is how far back it goes. People were questioning Big Nose right after the event, and they're saying, well, we heard that the pay-per-view buys were under $1 million, and Floyd said he can get $1 million fighting anyone. What's the response? And he would dance around the question. I was like, well, I have the numbers right in here. Why don't you show them to us? You don't tell me how to do my job. I do my job. You don't get to tell me what to do. Okay, well, I know he's got a $32 million. Of course, he got a $32 million guarantee, even if the pay-per-view buys were $50,000. So that check didn't validate the fact that was $1 million pay-per-view fight. And to this day, the numbers officially to that fight have not been released. It says $1 million if you go on, if you look at pay-per-view buys throughout history on Wikipedia, but Showtime and Mayweather Promotions to this day have not released the official numbers to the Guerrero fight. Well,
I know Showtime used to always, they would like Showtime, same as HBO. HBO always released the numbers. And it's just funny that
because they were paying taxes had no time, like you said.
Exactly. Plus, and then there's also on top of that, there's also, I found out there's It's actually against the law. So if you're a representative of a certain corporation, you can't publicly state something, upsell it by more than 20%. You can't lie on something. Like you can't say, oh, yeah, this product did this. And if they find it, there's big fines involved this. So that's the reason why. And it's not just Showtime, because Fox is silent too. Fox is not releasing the pay-per-view numbers. The only one releasing PBC pay-per-view numbers was an ex-employee, Carpenter. Now, I always said that. And to prove it, I would say the fact that he's gone silent. Now, mind you, he couldn't wait to tweet out that he heard it wasn't him the first, but he was retweeting and talking about how Crawford didn't sell well, Crawford and Porter. Right. But yet, why was somebody answer me, how come his fucking sources suddenly got silent when it was negative press for the PBC? Unless
you're absolutely right.
He's a show, right? He's a show.
Are you suggesting that he's still being paid by the PBC?
I don't know what Jimmy's saying. I'm going to piggyback off with this and saying that he still has a loyalty to them, whether they are paying him side money or not, to where he's still loyal to because let's face it, when he got his foot in the door, it was with PBC. When he finally became a writer and was hired on to ESPN because Steve Kim and Dan Raphael left, it was probably a better paying gig than what Al was giving him. I don't think there was any ill will when he left. I'm hypothetically speaking on all of this. Don't quote me on any of it. But he went on to a better paying gig to where he can still do good for their press. And that's what I'm speculating. I've got no proof on this, but this is what I'm thinking.
He got gassed. He got gassed from fucking Fox. They fired him. He didn't leave that show. They just didn't. At first, the initial report was it was being shelved. Well, there was a lull because of the COVID, but basically they never brought it back. So he was gassed from, it was called Inside the PBC. But he was always, like you said, positive to the PBC. Was always like now this is what Heyman does, like right off the rip, right at the release in May of 2015, Steve Kim never got credentials sent to him. He was never, because he never applied for them. Like, he knew the only way you were going to get access to Heyman fighters was if you were a cheerleader. No offense, but Jake Donovan is a prime example. He might be a good guy in real life, but that dude is always glowing press about the PBC. And if you don't give glowing press, you don't get access. So I think that he might not have been receiving still any, monetary value, but I'm sure the guys at somebody from the inside of PBC working with Heyman was told them, we will still give you access to fighters. Release the numbers for us because we can't release them because we'll be held to him. So he, in his heart, he must have knew these numbers were inflated. And the fact that to me, like if I was ESPN and I was a boxing guy, if they knew what he did and how bad that makes him look, that he is the first one within 7 days to tweet out numbers reportedly did this, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, when there's one that everybody knows tanked, his sources go silent. That's fucking terrible. To me, that means you're just a shill, dude. You're just repeating, calling it sources, but your sources is being leaked from the promotion that's lying about him. So to me, I think his fucking credibility is shot. And if he ever tweets out pay-per-view numbers again for the PBC in the future, that even solidifies it.
His credibility is shot either way, because even if he's not on like a payroll or anything else like that, he's not doing real journalism, which is what Steve Kim does. He finds it, he covers it, he posts it, he prints it. Excuse me, there's a key word in there I forgot to mention. He verifies, and then he prints it. Carpenter's putting out stuff that only looks good on what he wants to cover. And now we're going on assumptions. Jimmy and I are not saying this is really how it works with Mike Carpenter for anybody that's listening. But hypothetically speaking, he can get all the interviews, all the press row seats, all the coverage for ESPN, which is not really affiliated with PBC, by staying writing positive stuff to them, and he still gets all the coverage while working for ESPN. These are a benefit and a kickback that he's obviously still getting, even if he's not on the payroll. So, and again, anybody that speaks in it, like we said, Steve Kim doesn't say doesn't kiss up to PBC. He never gets sent credentials. Dan Raphael is nothing against his character, but he wants to cover everything in boxing, period. So he's going to do what he has to do to make sure he gets the credentials to cover every fight out there. But he also is a consummate, as much as I don't like all of his opinions, he's a consummate professional of when, a perfect example, on a side note, and pardon me for going down this rabbit hole, when Roy Jones and Bernard Hopkins had their rematch, nobody gave a crap about it, period. He said he was the only person there that day to cover the fight. He said, it's because it's my job. So he said they usually feed the press row people when they're doing their interviews. He said he was the only one. USA Today wasn't there. I think he was with ESPN at the time, but HBO wasn't there. Nobody was really there. Outside entities trying to get press passes to get in to interview the fighters. He said he was the only one there. So he covers it because it's his job, and he tries to cover everything because that's his job. Steve Kim doesn't have to do that anymore. He's made his name, and now he says, you get burnt out by trying to cover everything, go find what you like. It's nothing against the PBC. He's just not going to kiss up to get in there because he's got other things to do. He follows other sports. So but when it comes to, man, I'm sorry, I'm going to wrap this up. When Carpenter comes into play, I don't read too many of his stuff that comes out. I don't tweet Twitter or anything along those lines, but his articles that comes out, it's mostly just around PBC fighters. I don't see him following Bob Arum fighters out there writing pieces unless it's slander pieces. Slander, I'm using the term loosely, but something that's not over complimentary towards the fighter or Bob Arum himself. Okay, and I don't even see any of those, period, that he covers at all. So because
he works for the network too, the shitbag. He works for the network with signed fucking Top Rank, which is even crazy. You saw what he said to Bob, how he got in Bob's face when he said, well, you didn't sign, when he was talking about Camboza.
If you had paid the kid what he wanted to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was outrageous for him to cross the line like that. Why wouldn't you do that to Bob? Like, if that's the guy your company has. And I'm sorry, I stepped all over you, brother. You were going to say something.
I've interrupted somebody else twice, so I'm going to shut up now.
Is that Virtuoso?
Yeah, that was me, man.
Okay, brother. All right.
Sorry, Virtuoso, go ahead.
Virtuoso.
And
shit, is it here?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I can hear you now, brother.
It's just kind of interesting to me how, it is kind of illegal to overstate your value, when it comes to pay-per-view numbers. And so, it is interesting to see a guy that is not liable to a company directly like Carpenter to do that for them. Because if he says it, Carpenter, okay, yeah, whatever. He's a yellow journalist. You can say that. But if it's straight from the horse's mouth, you're kind of like getting into trouble there, because you're getting people invested, people's money invested into something that isn't really selling.
But,
right. And they, again, like Jimmy said, if they want to claim on the end of the year that, let's say, Spence only did 1 fight in a year and it did 250,000 pay-per-view buys, they got to pay the taxes on that 250,000. If they claimed out loud that they did 350,000 and said, "Oh, you're not going to pay taxes on 350 because we only did 250," it's open that you're heading yourself for a possible audit. They don't want to do that, so they use Mike instead, Carpenter, to put the numbers out there as being the reliable source, but he's the one that says it, doesn't reveal what the source is, and then they're only on the line for what they sold, not for what they claimed.
Right. And now think about it, though, right? The fact that he didn't send it out for for Davis Cruz, that he's been the go-to guy, but he was waiting for him. The fact that he was silent on a fucking pay-per-view that everyone knows tanked, no pun intended. The fact that he didn't tweet anything out there and is just dead silent, like, oh, it tells you. So you're admitting that you don't want to print something that puts the PBC in a negative light. To me, that is so, like, that's one thing. Steve Kim's on a first name basis with Bob. He knows where he lives, phone number, everything, right? He's known him for years. He would never, like, fucking not print something that, he's gone right after Top Rank. He's said, like, right now, he's doing it right now with Inoue. And I agree 100% with Steve, what he's saying. He's saying he feels that Top Rank has kind of dropped the ball. The level of competition this kid's fighting, the fact that how come you're not getting, fights in Japan? Why aren't that on Top Rank?
Well, we know we can't get him in Japan, but why isn't he bringing him here? Because, Japan
even if he fought other Japanese fighters, if he fought at least other Japanese fighters, they wouldn't have to worry about that whole COVID thing, or at least some other fighter that could stay there longer. But the fact that he's not putting his kid on enough, when you have a kid of that kind of talent, it seems like he's dying on the vine, and Steve's been very vocal about it, and he's always been that way.
And he's right.
If that was Heyman, you would be done. Yeah, and if he was with Heyman and Steve did that, he knows he'd be done. Like, you can't do that. Heyman's a thin-skinned dude. Obviously, the guy won't even give a fucking interview. He's obviously got some, he's a shy dude or whatever, but he's obviously thin-skinned too, because he doesn't want anything said about him negatively. And how I know that for a fact? Because he makes fighters sign non-disclosure. So if you say
Right.
anything negative about him, the PBC, or its product, meaning other fighters. All right, prime example, Chris Colbert. Who it wasn't fucking Deontay Wilder's people who called him and said, hey, take down that video. That was the fucking somebody from the PBC office. Yeah, because he was insulting Wilder, saying, he didn't fucking know glove gate, and he was making fun of Wilder. Within 24 hours, that Fight Hype was told to take that video down by Chris Colbert. And that's all Fight Hype said. Well, Chris Colbert told us, nobody else. But yeah, exactly. Because Chris Colbert was called by someone from the PBC. And then since then, right, Chris Colbert's he went off that was trending in boxing Twitter. When he came out and said that when he was at the gym in Philly with Danny Garcia, that was all over Twitter, right? Colbert's name, everything. He's gone dark. So did he not only tell him to shut the fuck up, but to maybe not make any more fucking comments? Because this kid had personality to burn. I like Chris Colbert. He's one of the few kids I like.
Accounts, sorry, Jimmy. You remember Ness from the Boxing Voice? I believe he's involved in that channel, right? And I think he was pressured to delete that video of him saying that, about talking about Wilder negatively.
Yeah, he was told. Yeah, no, they told him to take it down. He was told, and he was told, I guess, by Fight Hype, because they were the one. Was it Fight Hype who put it up? But the thing is, but it wasn't Wilder's people. See, again, Wilder's fans kept saying, but it wasn't Wilder. He didn't say nothing. Of course it wasn't Wilder's people, but it was Wilder's people who called Al Heyman and said, because I'm sure fucking Wilder, who watches YouTube, gets on, sees Chris Colbert. I mean, it was trending on Twitter and everything, bashing him. And he was in the middle of a camp. Tells you where his brain is at. They took time out of his camp to call fucking Al, Colbert's talking shit about me, and he got the call. So the fact is, a non-disclosure claim, there's all kinds of shit going over there that I think is going to all come out in the wash when that place, because I can't see it hanging on much longer between the fact, although I heard they're trying to sign with a network right now, a streaming app, which will be kind of funny if they do an app, because their fans, that's their go-to shit on, like ESPN, they shit on DAZN. Who wants to fight on an app? That's what that's what they keep saying.
Pay-per-view is the only way to go is their motto. When his original motto was no more pay-per-view because we're going to be on free TV.
That's how we got the money. Mike Hill, his attorney, Mike Hill. That's another funny thing. I just got to say, Mike Hill, his wife, him are both white. His head of public relations is white. His head secretary's been with him for years, is black. But he surrounds himself with a lot of white people. Not that matters to me. I normally wouldn't even have noticed or cared. But it's just so funny that his base and there's a whole group of people who treat him in a couple and say he represents black people, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that is not even how Al Heyman thinks. You know what I mean? Like, he obviously doesn't think like that. So, again, I'm sorry, I'm going off topic. It's just, I always found that to be fucking funny.
Well, let's double back to something you said earlier. You're talking about Spence in regards to Crawford and Ugas and everything else like that. I got a house of cards I want to try and put out quickly so that people can respond to it and not take up too much time. This is the way I kind of see this. So, what's the last thing Bud said when he wanted? Bud said he doesn't want to fight till he's 40 and he wants to finish out his era. Not in so many words. He didn't say that last part. He said Spence and Thurman, which is finishing out his welterweight era while he was there. That's all he's really interested in. So what do we see? We see Spence going to fight Ugas, and then Thurman's got to fight against Barrios. Now that's a two-edged sword right there. If Thurman wins, especially if he doesn't look good, they're going to let him do a Sean Porter and go straight after Bud because they're going to write him off and say they'll negotiate for him, but that'll be his last fight with them, and he'll probably retire afterwards. If Barrios wins, they'll say that the Tank fight was too much of a strain on him. He's moving up to 147. He just beat one of the best welterweights of the past 10 years, and they'll sell that fight that way. That's what's going to keep Bud busy. What they're not closing in on is Ugas 1 is not going to be, at this stage of Spence's career, an easy fight. 3 to 4 years ago, it would have been maybe an exciting, challenging, but still a one-sided 8-4 victory for Spence, in my opinion. Now, not so much. But even if he wins, and he stays at welterweight, he's still got to fight that guy that I can't pronounce his name either, Jimmy, but he's still got to fight that guy that was supposed to fight Ugas not too long ago. That guy doesn't have to wait any further. So that means there's going to be another, and Spence only fights 2 fights a year. So that means you're not getting Crawford this year regardless. Now, play with me just for a little bit longer before I'm done. If Spence doesn't look good against Ugas, he's not even going to fight that guy. He will fight the winner of Castano and Charlo, especially if Charlo wins and doesn't look good, because now Charlo will be 32 years old. You've been fighting not B minus, but B level competition your entire championship career. You didn't fight J-Rock. You didn't fight Jared Hurd. You didn't fight Lara. You fought all the other guys to get these belts. And then you fought Castano, who you struggled with twice, especially if he wins this next one, not so convincingly. He brings nothing else to the table for the PBC. How do they make anything back to him? They feed him to Spence. Even though they're friends, even though they're managed by the same guy, even though they're trained by the same guy, things can change quickly when money's involved. In which case, if Charlo loses, what do they do with him after that? If he loses to Spence, move him up, get the B title against Lara at 160, and because Lara's definitely not bringing them anything except for FS1 not empty arenas, and being shown his main event is being shown at midnight on FS1, so he's obviously a third, fifth wheel to them, and that's how I see this stuff panning out. Charlo, Ugas, if he doesn't look good, Spence, Ugas, if he doesn't look good, he goes to Charlo. Charlo goes to 160, and Bud's still frozen out. Anybody have anything to say to that?
Well, I would agree that if they're not going to give him Spence. Spence doesn't want that fight. But the problem is with Crawford or Barrios, I doubt Crawford would waste his time because neither one of them would have a belt. Crawford is probably going to only fight people now who have belts.
So you're saying if it would only be Thurman out of that situation of that fight, if they're going to feed him anything, if it's not Thurman, he'll probably go to he'll either go to Josh Taylor or one of the young bucks in Ortiz, who is his mandatory, or maybe even an Ennis fight since he's a free agent and he's trying to work with PBC. Is that what you're suggesting, Jimmy?
Yeah, I would think. Well, Ennis would have to get a belt first too. And Ennis Gary Shaw, I believe he's the dude who runs. He's in charge of Boots Ennis. I mean, Boots Ennis got 28 pro fights. He's fought one current or ex-world champion. That was a kid he dragged up. Boots is on the big side of welterweight. He took out Lipinets. That's his only champ he's ever fought. So they've clearly brought him in. He's a talented kid. You know, I've been singing his praises, but they brought him along slow, and they're feeding him. There's no way they're going to jump into a Crawford fight. Pretty soon they're not going to be able to duck certain fights. Like, I'm really high on like Xander Zayas and these Virgil Ortiz. The reason being, they got to trim fat. You got to get rid of Mickey Garcia. He's got to go. The fucking Gary Russell Jr., he's got to go. All these fucking hang-arounds who made too much money for too little effort, and now because again, okay, we could have gotten Mickey Garcia pro Grace, but we didn't get it because Mickey Garcia was millions of dollars more than they were willing to offer him. Millions more than they were willing. Right. Not like they were, we were off a couple $100,000, we just couldn't make it shut. Millions. And then you ask yourself, why is that? Because you paid him $7 million to fight Vargas. Of course he's going to act like that. You think he's going to take $2 million now to fight a fucking dude who can actually beat him? No, so
especially since he lost his last fight, though, he's got to eventually. Mikey, has got to realize his bargaining stature of where he's at, of what he has left to offer. He may be Mikey the mercenary, but he's basically the level of a gatekeeper now. So if it's not going to be a title fight, he's not going to fight somebody. If it's not going to be worth his while, it's either going to be a title fight, big money, or both. Right. And
you know what? Sorry.
No one's going to try and fight a former featherweight who's not a mandatory, a welterweight who can't draw anything. So the only way for him to get a big money fight is a title fight. In order to get a title fight, he's got to rejuvenate himself after getting an embarrassing upset loss to a guy who only has 6 knockouts and 35 fights. I'm exaggerating some of those numbers, but obviously he lost to a guy that shouldn't have been able to sting him with anything because the guy didn't have any real power. But Mikey didn't show up in shape, and that's what happened.
It just doesn't make Errol Spence. It's a win that it doesn't age well for Errol because again that's against that fucking career super featherweight. But so I agree with everything you're saying, dude. And I don't know, man. I would think Broner maybe they might feed Broner even because if there's not a belt, they're gonna have to have someone as a name. Because all right, Crawford. even if it's true, they said I heard numbers between 130 and 190, right? That's what they're saying. So let's
I heard
split the
190.
difference. Say 150. Okay, so let's say 190. They would want a name, and regardless of how much of a clown he is, and we all can agree to that, Broner's got a name. Broner's, because he's got name recognition, that could bring eyes to it. It would be, and if somebody, that's one thing you can say about Broner, nobody's ever stopped him yet. You know,
That's the thing I'm
Madonna's
about to
heard
get
him.
at. That's the thing I'm about to get at.
Madonna's heard him the most.
Gary Antoine
Yeah.
Russell, the younger brother
Can I
to
touch on
the featherweight.
something? Can I
Yeah,
touch on
absolutely.
something related to
Go ahead.
this? That's related to Spence and Ugas. One of the things that I think many boxing fans are missing are how these alphabet boys are influencing the decision to make these fights. It's no secret nowadays that that WBO has an sort of as an allegiance to Top Rank or Bob's organization, and the WBA. It's we're back Al. We're behind Al. You know, and Suleiman and the WC, they're mostly loyal to Mexican fighters that are really cool. They're more diplomatic. IBF, I don't know much about them, but I think they have the most integrity. But I want to hone in on the WBA for a second, right? So last summer we had in place of Spence, we had Ugas fight Manny Pacquiao to find out who's the real WBA champion. Remember that, guys?
Yes, that was a terrible thing, but
So
yes.
yes, okay. So yeah, unfortunate, but hey, this is how it goes. But here's what really got me, had me, thinking like wait a minute, what's going on here? When they announced that 4-man tournament, listen to this. They announced a 4-man tournament to figure out to weed out who's the real WBA champion. We already saw who's the real champion between Spence and between Ugas and Pacquiao.
Right.
So it became really like strange to me why that is. And then I found out, on Box That Live, right, where they showed all the rankings, right, that Jamal James has a belt. Now, why is that? I don't understand. I thought the WBA changed. I thought they were done with all these extra belts, all silver and shit, and like it looks
Okay,
like they're
so
still doing this without any rhyme. Well, hold on, without any rhyme or reason. He had a belt, but to me, I felt like that was a smokescreen for them to negotiate Spence and Ugas after what happened between Porter and and Crawford and him leaving and trying to make a move.
So, to my understanding, and if I got the timelines right, this is the way I know it to be, and I've been wrong before, so don't hold everything against me. But they announced the fact that they were going to consolidate. They weren't just dropping the people that had already held a WBA sanctioned piece of property, for lack of a better term. So they had their gold belts, they had their interim belts, they had their regular belts, they had their super belts, and they'd thinned themselves out. But instead of just stripping these guys, they were going to be doing these tournaments in just about every weight division. The one they did it the most in, or one of the ones they did it the most in, to be a little more accurate, was welterweight. Because, like you said, Jamal James had a title, but it was probably like an interim or something lower, or maybe the gold belt. It wasn't it may have been the regular belt, because once they elevated Ugas, no one had the regular belt anymore. So,
Yeah.
Now, quick history, and I'll make this quick. Where it started was when Lennox Lewis refused to fight John Ruiz, who earned his title shot, even though it would not have been a good fight other than Lennox winning, provided Lennox was in shape. Lennox said, I'm not going to fight John Ruiz, and John Ruiz earned that title shot. After getting knocked out by David Tua, he went on like a 19-fight winning streak, fighting Jimmy Thunder and other ranked guys. He became number one contender. When he said, I'm not going to fight him, the WBA took it away, and it became John Ruiz and Evander Holyfield and that terrible trilogy that never should have been allowed. But anyway, the people got so mad that Lennox Lewis lost the belt outside the ring, the WBA tried to make up for it, saying, oh, we're going to make Lennox the super champ. Then they set a precedent for it and said, oh, well, here's how we're going to do this. Anytime that a WBA champion fights in a unification fight, they'll become the super champion, and then they'll have a regular belt. And, of course, then they got worse than that. Now, we all know about this other stuff. We just talked about that at the beginning of my statement. So at welterweight, they were doing a consolidation. Now, so you're right, there was a super champion because it was Ugas. They took the belt away from Manny and they gave it to Ugas for no reason at all whatsoever. Then Ugas and Manny fought, and because the Spence fight fell through. I'm guessing Manny was going to go into the Spence fight as a non-belt holder before the fight fell apart, and then it became a WBA fight again. Your theory of what's happening about this being a smokescreen to negotiate the Spence Ugas fight, I'm not going to argue with that. It sounds very plausible with the WBA and the PBC combined because they do this kind of things. But the consolidation had already started in that direction because Jamal James fought somebody else, I forget who. They already had one of those fights, and then it was basically a 4-man bracket down to about to be a 2-man bracket. And Ugas was going to fight one of those individuals until they paid this guy step aside money, and now we're caught up to where we are now. So,
I just think, listen, I like Ugas. I think he's a good professional. I think he's a consummate professional. But like in the ring, I don't see much anything special with him. I feel like it's kind of a pet project with him because like he beat Abel Ramos for that belt, for that vacant title. Whereas Manny, he beat Lucas Matisse, for that title. So it's like, and the way he acted after winning that belt, after consolidated with Manny, allegedly, he was very standoffish about fighting his mandatory. Like that was like, bro, that's part of the deal. Like I felt like he should have just get that Staniotis fight and wait for Spence because it's not. We haven't heard any clearance from no medical reports or anything that he's cleared to fight. It's just from his word of mouth that I'm gonna come back in March or April to train. When we don't even know how long it's gonna take for that thing to heal. Like,
I believe they told him it would take you would be fine to fight. Pretty much almost was within a couple of months, so he claims after the Pacquiao fight. So I guess he's all set to go. I guess they've already made the negotiations. The thing that blows my mind is Ugas, not only was he on social media just crying about the fact he had to face a mandatory, he was sticking. He fucking stuck up for Spence. He tweeted out, "Why is everybody attacking Spence, man? He's a professional player." Like, you're sticking up for the guy you're fighting? I've never seen that before. Like, he's taking to social media. So, like, why is that? And that kind of tells me, I think right from the get-go, he was probably told if he won the belt from off, if he maintained, if he kept the belt, because, again, you said, like, how they stripped Pacquiao, WBA, to show you their hypocrisy and their bullshit. You got Gary Russell Jr., Leo Santa Cruz. He's had that 126 fucking belt or 136 belt hostage for years. He hasn't fought in the division in over 2 years. He went up and got knocked out in a fucking at 135. By rights, he should have given up his belt then. They didn't pull it from him. He still has his fucking WBA belt, but they pull it from Manny, who was right. So what was that? Why did they pull it? Because who benefited from it? The PBC, because it went to a PBC fighter.
You're right, but let's look at one other thing. The same thing, and as much as I've been defending Bob on this show, Bob, in my opinion, fixed the what's that guy's name from Australia?
Moses.
No, the
Jeff Horn.
Horn. Because he didn't want Manny leaving with the WBO belt going over to PBC. Just like this was Manny. Manny had a 2-fight deal with a 3rd fight option with PBC. So they were going to let him fight Danny Garcia, Mikey Garcia, venture out somewhere else, even though Danny's under their promotional banner, Mikey wasn't. They'd let him do that, but then when he was going to jump ship altogether and go fight Crawford, and that belt was possibly going to go over to be a unification fight, no, you're going to be stripped due to inactivity. And so they took it away, and and Ugas didn't even fight for a vacant super belt. They just gave it right to him. He didn't even win that belt in the ring, which is why I really don't respect this situation.
That wasn't a vacant title when he fought Abel Ramos.
That was for the regular belt,
right? But it was vacant, right?
The regular belt. I don't remember.
Right. Sorry.
The regular belt was held by you just says it Matisse, and Manny beat him. Then Keith Thurman had the super belt, and Manny went and fought him. So when Manny became the super champion, the regular belt became vacant. This is ridiculous that we're talking about this like it's a freaking soap opera, because it's the stupidest stuff out there. And Andre Hall in the chat, my friend, asked the question, would the same thing be going on if Manny were for the champion? I don't think so, and I feel like I'm talking in middle school about gossip about who's dating who because how stupid this is. But historically, It's what happened. So that's why it went about. That's why Ugas was elevated, because he became the regular champion by fighting, what was his name again? Ramos?
Yeah, Abel Ramos.
Right. So
That's why
Ramos.
PBC fighters do that. Yeah, they all go after junior belts so they can be first in line if a belt comes up.
And so when
Yeah,
Manny was going to leave and go fight Crawford, they're like, no, we're taking this belt away from you. Oh, what can we do? We're going to elevate Ugas, who did nothing to be in line. Well, I won't say he did nothing to be in line. He was the regular champion. So,
it's like they
I've got to acknowledge that. But other than that, he did nothing to become the super champion at all. And they gave it to him until Manny fought him. Manny was going in, if I remember correctly, as the challenger, when he never lost the ring.
He never did. And it's like, it's so ridiculous how they just kept doing this super champion shit. And basically
back around 2001.
Yeah, going back to 2001. Thanks for letting me know on that. They pretty much devalue the regular title because they only should be an interim champion, right? Which is the actual name they actually dropped from one of their titles, which is the most ironic things that they've done, because now they have an interim title, which is a regular belt, which doesn't make any sense, because the only situation you should have that is when a fighter is suspended or injured, and instead they're just doing this thing willy-nilly, and WBC is following along with that shit.
Well, the WBC did it a long time ago in the 90s, and I don't know if this was the precedent that set it or not, but when Roy Jones fought Mike McCallum for the WBC light heavyweight belt, Fabrice Tioza was the champion at the time, but Tioza was considering going up to cruiserweight. So because he hadn't made up his mind if he was going to defend his belt or not, and instead of holding the belt hostage, they decided to throw an interim belt out there for a sanctioning fee, and if Tioza moved up, the winner would be automatically crowned champion. I'm not saying it didn't happen before that. It has happened after that in different situations, but it became almost like a regular belt. If I remember correctly, Jorge Arce at 112 never won the legitimate belt because the fighter from either Thailand, somewhere over in the Far East, in one of those Far East Asian communities, they never worked out a fight there. So Jorge Arce won the WBC interim championship at 112, never won the regular championship because they never made it. Well, the champion wasn't wounded, injured, in prison, or out of activity. He was still defending his belt over in the Far East, but for some reason, because Arce is Mexican, they gave him an interim belt, as if that counted as a world championship in another weight class. Mm-hmm. So they've abused what it was originally for. And again, the Roy Jones situation may not have been the first time they did it, but it's one that I know of that they did, and they had a valid reason, because the champion wasn't active and doing anything. So but the side of that is, Roy Jones enters the ring against Montel Griffin as the WBC champion, when he never officially won the WBC title, the real title, outside of an interim belt, against anyone. He beat a 40-year-old Mike McCallum for an interim belt, and then he enters automatically in his first title defense as the regular champion, meaning the WBC champion, and of course got lost by disqualification. So, what that brought into play on a history lesson was it screwed up the entire light heavyweight situation, because Darius Michalczewski went on to become the legitimate lineal and multi-belt champion in that weight division. Roy never fought him, and yet was still called undisputed and lineal champion for most of his career, when it was actually Darius Michalczewski who, and the side note to that is, Virgil Hill had unified two belts, and when Roy got disqualified, he went over to go fight Michalczewski. After Roy got disqualified, Michalczewski beats Hill and has the WBA, the IBF, and the WBO, and gets stripped of two of those belts, which Roy picked up off of paper champions and became quote-unquote undisputed, while Michalczewski never lost his title during that whole time.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that was an interesting time there. That was before, like, I know it was the early ages of the internet, but if there was Twitter back then, there would have been an uproar.
Well, on top of that, if there would have been YouTube, because it took a lot. I think the Virgil Hill Michalczewski fight was on ABC, but they didn't televise the Virgil Hill, Henry Maskey fight. Those were the two long-reigning champions at that weight that faced off with each other. And Roy says he didn't want to go overseas to fight someone because he got robbed in Korea. He was scared to get robbed again. And Virgil Hill, who can't knock out a balloon with razors on his fists, goes over and wins a split decision against Henry Maskey in Germany. So who actually looks like the coward now in hindsight? He went over there knowing he wasn't going to get a knockout to outbox the German champion in Germany, comes back to America with 2 belts, and the king of the division at the time, because he had 2 out of 3 belts, and at the time, with over 2 reigns, had broken Bob Foster's title defense record at that time in history. And then Roy gets DQ'd, so he goes back over to Germany to get paid well. Virgil Hill does, and I'm repeating myself, but he loses to Michalczewski. Now Michalczewski's got 3 out of 4 belts, and again, never fought. Roy never fought him.
Yeah. Let me pose a question, you guys. Gervonta, or whatever way you pronounce his first name, Davis. I think the gig is up with this dude. I think with the promotion, it's up. The fact, I don't know if you guys know this, but the LDBC, which is obviously champion anything, PBC, Al Heyman, Floyd Mayweather, they stand by everything. But even, I don't know if you guys knew that, but Fred, fucking one of the head guys over at the LDBC, put out a video saying enough's enough. This is a scam. We got to block this shit. You don't buy these. Anytime L would be tweets, you need to get into his fucking mentions and tell him the gig is up. And he's been getting crucified. He argued after the fight with Cruz. He went at it with Steve Kim, Duchesne, Big Boy Dan. He went out with everybody. I mean, he was just losing his mind, Ellaby, on Twitter, because he knows the walls are closing in. Now, my thing is this. What do you do? His next fight, to me, is going to be very crucial. There's no way they can do another Romolio. But the problem is, now here's the problem. They like to talk about Tank's a superstar. Tank's a fucking Tank. You're a superstar, but you know who's a superstar? Canelo. You know how you know Canelo's a superstar? Because the guy who just fought him never made more than $700,000 on a fight before. Fights him and makes $10 million. That's what superstars do. Superstars, because they're so big, just through osmosis, you get that fucking cash. They pay Cruz a guaranteed it's usually still, even if it's like Floyd would pay 40%, he'd pay 20% on average, but that would still be much more money than majority of these guys ever made in their career. They only pay Cruz a guaranteed $300,000. Yeah, you're not going to get anybody unless you're willing to pay the money, and they've already said they're not willing. But I just find it very funny that after the fucking Santa Cruz fight, the Barrios fight, when he said, we're going to keep everything in-house, blah, blah, blah. But the minute Kambosos wins that fucking title, well, we're interested in that fight. Yeah, of course you are. You weren't interested in it when Tio had them belts. You weren't interested in it when Lomachenko had the belts. But now you're interested in it. But here's the thing. I know that Haney would probably, I think he's the WBC's number one. Well, depends on a few factors. But one of the things that would prevent the Haney fight is the money. Think about it. He's been paid $3 million. How are the Kambosos going to be able to pay him that kind of money?
Jimmy, it's funny how Ellerby was like, you know what, Tank's a star, but like when it comes to Haney, like in terms of the payout, because we are talking, because it all relates to how much money they make, because that's how you sell yourself. It's how much money you make, right? All of a sudden the printer breaks when they mention Haney. Oh, we can't have that. We don't have that kind of money. It's like, exactly, because you're fucking broke. Now, since I just brought up Haney real quick, I just want to say this real quick. I really feel like they were setting him up, and this is in relation to the belt conversation that's still going on, right? Still having. I really felt like the WBC was trying to set him up to face Ryan, because like, you know how they kept having him like face kept having Ryan, compete in these title eliminators, and he just kept refusing.
Right.
Like he refused. He refused to. He dropped the belt, like the whatever junior interim, whatever the fuck it is, title against Luke Campbell, right? Then he scheduled the fight for a title eliminator all of a sudden, oh, I'm depressed. I don't, I'm gonna go take a year off. Okay, all right. Now what do you do with Haney? Because like, um, Cambosos is kind of is not really pursuing this thing because like I don't see any much movement or any talk about negotiations with Eddie and Lou over undisputed. Loma's name keeps getting brought up. He's still relevant, and I just saw a poll that he did on Twitter that most people are Loma's in the lead. People are mostly interested in that fight over him and Haney. I, and I have to say this, and this is no disrespect to him. I think he's going to be a great champion, but I don't think he's just there yet. I thought to me he's more like NABF title, material.
Yes.
Just bring him up slowly, and then you won't have this controversy over this fucking franchise
Well,
shit.
First of all, they forced this by trying to I don't know why he turned pro at 17, and once he got to right around his 20s, they're pushing. We want titles. We want titles. We want titles. We want titles. And it wasn't like he was becoming the youngest champion in that division or the youngest champion in history. So, other than that, you're right. They should have brought him slowly. He should have just been in the title picture now at 20. What, he's 22, 23? So the past 2 years when he's been walking around with this WBC belt that he got from anything but fighting a reigning champion for, they should have been bringing him along instead, putting him on network TV to build the audience around. You're completely right. Instead, they got him. His people forced this situation to get him a belt. Now he's got one, and he says nobody wants to fight him, but he wants to get $3 million fighting nobodies. In which case, when he's going to fight Loma or somebody else, he's going to want 5 or more. He draws nothing. He's fought 3 featherweights in a row who he can't now. Last one being JoJo. I don't remember JoJo ever being floored. I'm not saying he never was, but I don't remember him being floored. He's a tough guy. I get that. But he was a featherweight. You fought as an amateur, as a lightweight at 17. You're a naturally bigger man than him. And when you fought the other 2 featherweights, they had a combined 8 losses, all by knockout, and you couldn't floor any of them. So now, on top of that, you add in the fact, he's got a good straight right hand, a good jab, and good movement. That's great. That sounds like Tyrone Crawley. You ever heard of him? Yeah, exactly. You ever heard there's a number of guys that were just contenders in the 80s and 90s. He looks just like him. He's vanilla. There's nothing special about him. It sounds like I'm disrespecting him, and all I'm saying is the fact that he brings nothing of like, I've got to see Devin Haney next, aside from his cronies and his fanfare. But for people that really love boxing, what has he done differently to you? You're saying he's got a lot of talent. I'm not arguing with you. What has he done in your eyes that says, I've got to watch Haney win a title and be a great champion? What has he done? And what does he have? What X factor does he have that makes you think that?
Yeah, and the thing is, I can't put the onus on him and him alone. I gotta put again. It's about these belt organizations and their agendas. You know how I said that they have that the WBC particularly doesn't quite kiss ass to just one promotion. They pick their spots when it comes to Mexican fighters, and I think they're trying to set up Haney with Ryan Garcia because they have a history.
Right? Yeah, they
Garcia,
do.
from what I learned because he beat him in the amateurs, right? And so they try to set up this matchup, but like, Garcia is not a willing partner. I don't know what the fuck is on his mind, So it's like I can't put it all on Haney, but it's like, dude, you shouldn't be puffing your chest out. That you're being avoided because like look, he beat, and again, I have to blame the WBC because of their fucking rankings. Like, who the fuck rep Freddie Santiago or Abdullayev as number 1 contenders to fight Haney for that belt? I'm like, I don't know. Something's fishy is going on here. So I just felt like it was kind of a pet project. So if they're gonna do that, they're gonna have to bring him up slowly. Like again, give him the NABF, for startups. And then find your groove, and then move up. Fuck the lightweight division because like it's become a division.
Yeah, there's too much going on there with too many divisions, too many sects, too many different things to try and so you're the king of the lightweight division. Let's face it. Yeah, the heavyweight division, the welterweight division, the middleweight division, and then maybe the lightweight division in the history of the sport, even though it's always been there. It's never been a premier So go ahead and you're too big for that. You're struggling to make weight. Go ahead and go to 140. Now you're not going to get a title unless you go through Josh Taylor, but you can get a few fights while you're there for tune-ups to acclimate to the weight that are exciting. You can get Regis Prograis. You can get a few other guys up there, and then you can get number one contender, and Josh Taylor will be more than happy to fight you if he stays at that weight.
Yeah, I think he'll stay at 135. I think he's going to stay at 135. I can't see him moving up, only because it would be silly. He just doesn't have the punch resistance. The fact that he was shook for that long after Linares, you know what I mean? He was still hanging on the next round. That's at 135. He goes up to 140. That's a big jump. They hit a lot harder at 140. So it'd be about the same token. Who does he fight at 135? He's almost frozen out there because of the money he makes, the network he's with. But I mean, there's some good fighters there too. Well, all right. Now, was Shakur? Is he campaigning at 130?
Yes.
Now Stevenson. I'll tell you right now, if he goes up to 135, he'll be good.
For him to fight, I think Burchett, because Burchett's about shot, and then Valdez is going to fight Navarrete. And then the winner of those two fights are going to fight each other, with the projected winners of being Valdez and Shakur. That becomes a big money fight for the two of them. And if Shakur wins, it is in his early 20s. He goes up to the next weight class and now becomes a commander, even though he doesn't have a belt, because he's a two-time champion, and he's a two-time two-belt undefeated champion, and just comes off of a win of a two-time two-belt undefeated champion. None of those other guys have done that. I have to take that back. Tank did fight Leo Santa Cruz, even though he wasn't undefeated. He was a four-belt champion in four different divisions. So those are the only two that got those kind of credentials on their resume. That's not to say that any of them are better than what's out there, but on resumes, that's their selling point of what they've got and proven themselves with to separate the group. Because Ryan hadn't fought anybody. Loma's a horse. He's on an island by himself. We already know he's an all-time great and a Hall of Famer. The rest of them are still trying to establish themselves. Mm-hmm. And the other thing about Loma, someone mentioned earlier, most people want to see that fight against Kambosos than anybody else. Loma also arguably could end up being the undisputed number one contender. He's already the contender for the WBC, for the WBO. After his last fight against Comey, he should have moved up to what was the vacant spot in the IBF. And if his win was impressive enough to the WBA, even though there's no vacancies, he could have moved himself to the number one contender in that spot, depending what the WBA does. So he should be, by the time the next rankings come out, ranked number one by 3 of the 4 organizations.
But who's the regular champion at 135?
Tank.
Yeah. I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, Tank's the regular champ at 135. The actual, I think he gave that. Yeah, no, he kept that belt. He gave up his 130 belt, and I believe he gave up his 140 belt also. Yeah, so he doesn't have any actual. It's all junior. It's trinket belts. The actual 135, and this has been a tricky thing too. I don't know if you guys saw the news, especially this past week. Mauricio Suleiman comes out and says that Haney. Remember, because all of a sudden Lomachenko became the franchise champion. Haney was considered the regular champion, but not the regular. But he was the actual champion, and it was franchise status for Loma. So in essence, that took him out of the actual names amongst 135. The franchise tag, what that means is, supposedly when they first made it, anywhere he goes in any division, he gets first crack at a fucking champion because he's a franchise, like Canelo. So that's the reason why I think he could actually push that, use that to his leverage. He could use that to WBC. Well, I want Kambosa. He could use that through them. But because then this is tricky. He turned around. I mean, Mauricio Suleiman this past week said, well, Haney's our pride champion, and people lost it, especially Haney's fans. Like, what do you mean pride? No, he's the regular. Maybe people keep fighting about this. Teofimo's not really unified because Haney's the champ at 135. I mean, it got the WBC belt. Fimo has the rest of them. All of a sudden last week, Mario Suleiman comes out and says, calls Kambosos the unified champion. Undisputed, meaning he has all the belts, and all of a sudden Haney's the pride. So anyways, that sent the fucking boxing world, but I guess he's backed off those comments. I guess he's came out and again said, no, Haney is the champion at 135. Okay, so he's got the belt to 135. Haney. Who now is Kambosos, does he Does he want that belt? Does he want to really unify? Then he has to fight Haney.
I mean, I thought those probably one of the funniest things he ever said, man. That he's our pride champion. I thought he was actually gonna come out with a new belt with the multicolored flag. You know what?
I know.
Wow.
That's the first thing I thought of when he said pride. First thing
I'm
I
like,
thought of
wow,
too.
wow.
Like that was fucked up when he said that.
He's such a crook, man. Just like the rest of them. I can't stand these. I can't stand these alphabet boys, man. I just want them gone into like next year. Like if I had the power, like to just Thanos snap them out of existence, I would do it.
The only problem with that, and I agree, listen, they are corrupt, crooked fucks. I mean, Maru Suleiman, I mean, he was selling hot tubs, I believe, before he went into this to work for his father. No, I'm just kidding. Somebody said that once. I could pitch him doing that. But he has obviously a bias towards Mexicans. You can't blame him. It's a Mexican company. The green belt's out of Mexico. WBO's Bob's belt. WBA is the PBC's belt. IBF tries to at least hold their mandatories. The problem is I'm from the generation where the IBF, belts used to matter because they were the thing everybody fought for. Everybody wanted to be the champion, and it meant something to have a belt. And they forced people to fight. It made people fight their mandatories. If you don't fight your mandatory, give it up, and it's a duck.
Yeah.
So, they have their. If it wasn't for the mandatories, or the belts, half these fights we see wouldn't even be being made. You know what I mean? Like Porter wouldn't have been made if it wasn't for the IBF. The WBO, that fight wasn't going to happen. Now, that's a very interesting fight, too. Now, you know one of the reasons I believe Heyman didn't even negotiate Sean Porter? Said up front, I'm not even going to get involved in the purse bid. We don't want nothing to do with this fight. The reason being, he would have had to open the books. When you negotiate with a fighter, part of it, whatever this, no, we deserve this because we sold this many pay-per-views. They're not just going to take your word for it. They're going to want to see the books. Okay, show me what taxes were paid on. Let me see the real number. And they were so afraid of the real number, the real Spence Porter number to get out in the fucking ether that they just walked away from Porter, left him on his own. Like you said, no PBC insignia to be found anywhere. Although Watson was in the ring that night, he didn't lean in and say thank you to Al Heyman. That was the first time I've ever in all the years watching fucking Watson step in the PBC ring and him not remind a fighter to make sure you thank Al Heyman. Not only didn't he thank him after the fight, he didn't thank him in the post-press conference either. His name never even got mentioned. So, and he was with him for years. So that tells you that Porter must have felt like, wow. But again, that was all driven, in my opinion, because they didn't want to open the books to prove that they've been lying about the numbers they're selling. I think Steve's, what he was told is right. I believe it's a minimum of 40% they've been juicing these numbers. And I don't know what they're going to go going forward. I don't know what they're going to do. What do you guys think Ortiz-Martin sells, even at a low price point? What do you guys think?
I don't think it does. I think they're going to lose their butts on it. There's no way that gets 100,000 buys, in my opinion. Now, if I'm wrong, you want to sue me over my quote, go ahead. But
No way. I agree 100%.
What's it going to sell? What's on the line? Nothing. There's no title. There's no real eliminator for it. That, and see, all due respect to Ness, because Ness and I had talked offline on it a few times, and I was going to try and join his show, but it wasn't. I couldn't do it at the time. Andre Hall, my friend, who posted some in the chat, says he thinks it's going to sell about 20,000 buys. Anyway, my point about this whole thing was that was what HBO used to put on for a boxing after dark fight. This should not have been pay-per-view. And Ness was like, oh, come on. If they only sell it for, I think it's like $20 for this fight. How's it not pay-per-view worthy? Because Charles Martin has never really accomplished anything other than getting a belt off of a guy twisting his ankle in the ring and then losing it his first defense to Anthony Joshua. That's all Charles Martin's done. And then for Ortiz to have been this boogeyman that nobody wanted to fight, how come PBC only used him as cannon fodder for Deontay Wilder? If they really because heavyweight money is heavyweight money. If they thought they could have gotten him another belt and not lost to somebody else, they would have forced him on Joshua, because Al will cross the street when it suits him at his best, because he sure did sell out Andy Ruiz. He let Andy Ruiz go over there, and it worked out in their favor. But if Andy Ruiz would have lost, who cares? No big deal. Moving on. You know, because he had nothing to offer anything until he beat Joshua.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
so if Luis Ortiz does have something to offer and he's worth something and he's that good of a fighter, why wasn't he getting mandatory under any other belt other than the WBC, which the only belt they had at heavyweight at the time was the WBC with Wilder? They didn't force it in the WBO, the WBA, or the IBF. If he was that good, the IBF is the easiest belt to get ranked for if you're in the top 10. Once the top 2 spots become vacant, anyone in the top 10 that face each other becomes the mandatory number 1 contender. That's the easiest belt to get ranked number 1. How come Ortiz never got ranked number 1 in the IBF? Because is he really not that good, or did they just not want to have anything to do with him because he's Cuban? Because as we've said, they like to use their Hispanic fighters to build up their African American fan base. They've done it every time. I mean, Santa Cruz is probably going to be maybe not a first ballot, but an eventual Hall of Famer for being a 4-division champion. But what did they keep him for? He was on FS. He was on, undercard fights. And then when they put him in the main event, it was against a guy he had no business being in the ring against Tank. And what have they done with him since? Nothing.
Nothing.
And I have to. I was going to say I don't think four divisions get you in anymore. I can't see it, because if that's the criteria, if that's the basis, that means Broner and Mickey Garcia would also be Hall of Famers. And
know what? I hate to say this, but yeah, that isn't still a criteria that should be considered now, because not everybody jumps from featherweight all the way up to welterweight. Not everybody skips the 135 to the 147-pound division. Now, I don't like Broner. I think he's a loudmouth. I think he's a joke because he didn't take his career seriously. But only Duran and Mosley in my lifetime that I know of skipped the 140-pound division, went straight to lightweight and welterweight, and were successful.
Broner's but they fought real opponents. I think Broner, 2 of his 4 belts were vacants. He fought nobodies for them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't actually beat anybody to get the belts. Like, Mickey Garcia did the same thing. He jumped around picking off the easiest perceived opponent in every division. It was Lipinets at 140. It was fucking Easter at 135, but it was always the weakest champion, and that's going to come into play. From what I see from the the Boxing Writers Association of America, everybody I've seen talk about the Broner situation, from Mike Montero to even Donovan, who's a PBC guy, all said no way could they put Broner in, because actually, what's his big win? He's never had one at welterweight, where he's campaigned most of his thing. And it's because of that. Like, they look at him and they say he's only, if you look at who he's won to get those, it's the same thing. Mickey Garcia, maybe his competition is a little better, but Broner's run at 4 were terrible. And in Santa Cruz, I mean, put it this way, if they put him in the fucking Hall of Fame, the Hall of Fame, to me, is, might as well fucking piss on the fire and call it dogs.
Okay, let's look at something real quick. What is Jose Torres done to be in the Hall of Fame?
I don't even know who he is.
He's light heavyweight champ, trained by Customato. Wins the title, makes a defense.
Oh yeah. I forgot about him. Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying he wasn't a work of art when he was on the way up, because he was something to watch and be admired. Once he lost the title, I don't remember him coming back very successfully. He never won the title back. I don't remember having more than 3 fights, if that. And what did Ken Dorton do outside of beat Muhammad Ali in a non-title fight? He never won the title back. He was given the title outside of the ring, and then what happened? He lost his first defense against Larry Holmes. He's in the Hall of Fame. I love Arturo Gatti, and his wars against Mickey Ward are what got him in there. What signature fight did he have, victory, did he have to get him in the Hall of Fame? His wars with Mickey Ward, okay, but those were non-title fights. His 2 exciting fights with Ivan Robinson, which were not title fights, and Ivan Robinson was not an A-plus fighter. The 2 A-plus fighters he fought were De La Hoya and Mayweather. He got destroyed in. There are people in the Hall of Fame that have a lot of questions.
Well, in the 90s, In the 90s, Arturo fought some, I can't remember the names now, but they were top guys. He was fighting top
At
guys.
junior
A
lightweight,
lot of the times.
he fought some decent competition. But when he fought at welterweight, and I was not welterweight, well, yeah, at welterweight, because he fought De La Hoya at welterweight, and when he fought but he was past his prime when he went back up to welterweight again. But when he fought at lightweight, he had a losing record. I mean, I love Arturo Gatti. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad he's in the Hall of Fame. But what did he really outside?
I was questionable on him too. I honestly was
he
surprised when he got in.
He won a paper belt at 140 that got stripped from Kostya because Kostya was an inactive, wounded, injured fighter. So I'm not going to say Arturo Gatti doesn't belong in there. But if Arturo Gatti is in there, if Jose Torres is in there, if Ken Norton is in there, why are you going to say that Adrian Broner doesn't belong?
Ken Norton fought a lot of fucking. He fought all the big names.
Lost most that
he also beat. Well, didn't he beat Muhammad Ali or one of them?
One time in a non-title fight.
But he still beat Muhammad Ali, man. That's a big deal.
But when it counted for the title, he lost both times. And then when he fought George Foreman, he was crushed in 2 rounds. When he fought Ron Lyle, he lost. When he fought, it might have been Ron Lyle, or it was either Ron Lyles or Ernie Shavers. But he lost to every puncher he fought, and he got destroyed by Jerry Cunha.
They used to go by if you fought top 10 guys. Now, see, the thing is now, if you fight a top 9, say guys ranked number 9, a lot of number 9 guys, people don't know who it is. But it's because of the level of competition. That's how it's just a different animal back in the 70s. Now, you're going to understand when there's a reason why, like, all right, a good analogy is high schools. The reason why Division A high schools won't play Division D, or they don't allow in NCAA, they don't allow big schools to play little schools. The reason being, if you have a college with 30,000 students, obviously you're going to put a much better hockey team, much better football team because of the pool of people you choose from. The thing in boxing, the same thing goes today. If you had 10 million people doing something, what's the chances you're going to have a lot better people at the end of the day in the top 10 than when you have 100,000 people? And I really believe those numbers are accurate to what's going on today and when it comes to boxing. Back up until probably mid-70s, 77, right around there, NFL side grabbing traction, baseball side coming on. Listen, boxing was it. Boxing was the number one sport. Now, for instance, guys flip out now when they say 5 million. 5 million views? Holy shit, right? The fucking people suck each other's dick over that shit, breaking their arms, patting themselves on the back. Think about this. Muhammad Ali regularly fought TV viewer audience between 60 and 70 million people tuned in to watch. That's how big boxing was in this nation at one time. It was like just neighborhoods shut down to watch the fights on Saturday night. It was, because, football wasn't even televised until the late 70s. And baseball, there was always back and forth between baseball, America's pastime. But before lights, they didn't play at nighttime. So it wasn't a nighttime sport. So it was only boxing. That was it. That was the big sport. So, again, my town, 100,000 people live in this fucking city. We had 10 boxing gyms. 10 boxing gyms of a city, 100,000. Now we have 1.5, pretty much. One's a pot gym, pot something else. We only have one real boxing gym now. That's because there's nobody fucking joining here in the United States. The numbers are way down. All you have to do is go look at the Olympics. Nobody talks about the Olympics anymore in boxing, really.
No, it doesn't.
Before, that was huge. If you made the Olympic team, that was whether you won a gold or not, you just made the team. You were starting your pro career off at a much higher note than anyone else because you made the Olympic team. That's how huge it was to make the Olympic team. It's how much
Can I just chime in real quick about the
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. Yo, Chief, you mentioned precedents, and like I had this internal. I seriously had this internal debate with myself this afternoon at work. I'm like, yo, if Arturo Gatti gets in and Igamar Johansson gets in, then it's more than likely that Triple G is going to get in, based on those 20 title defenses.
Well, yeah.
Whether people shit on his record, fine. It's lackluster compared to Canelo, but I think he's going to get in. And whether it's going to be, I know there's going to be unpopular, opinions about this, but like it is what it is. Like people like have an affinity for certain fighters, and it's like there's agendas there. But like, I really do believe that he's gonna get in just based off a precedent. That's just it. Because I can agree with people that tell me that okay, his Triple G's resume is like is off. Like it's just not it's not the bee's knees. I get it, but with the 20 title defenses and that matches Bernard Hopkins, right?
Well, Bernard Hopkins didn't make an official 20 anyway. And people
Exactly.
forget that.
Yeah, Triple G
Yeah.
should make it in there. Just never mind the people that took step aside money. I mean, he got paid $800,000 from Cotto. Canelo gave up his belt, and he beat Canelo. Let's be honest. Everybody knows. Everybody in the
Well,
industry
you got
knows
20
he won that first fight. So
But you
imagine
got
if he would,
20
how much things would have been looked at differently. Sorry, Chief.
Go ahead.
What was that? No. What were you saying?
No, doing it. Well, he got 20 title defenses, and then he has former world champions on his resume. He's got Daniel Gilly. He's got Uma. He's got other people that, and it may have been towards the end of Uma's career, but he beat Uma down like nobody had beaten Uma up before. Like everybody else went tooth and nail to try and beat Uma. If they even got a win, he made it look easy. He beat him up and knocked him out. So yeah, this shouldn't even be a
also,
question. Hey, what's going on,
he's
Gonzalo?
still champion right now. He's close to 40. He's still got the IBF belt, right? Yeah, he deserves to be in, man. He's probably one of the greatest middleweights of all time, bro. Honestly.
Yeah.
Hey, Gonzalo, how was your Christmas, brother?
Who's got a chin like Golovkin?
Right? Hey, Gonzalo, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got the cheap Wi-Fi, the portable one, because I'm in the hospital. Mateo had he had a relapse.
Oh man.
Oh, Jesus, I'm sorry to hear that, brother.
Yeah, we're in the hospital, but it's all right. He's all right. It ain't that bad. It's just a relapse.
Okay. I'm good. Good to hear, man.
Yes, I agree with you, Gonzalo, that he should be in the Hall of Fame. Absolutely.
It shouldn't be a
Figure
question if he
everything
makes
in.
the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I see.
But his body's in there.
Make that
Marjo
point, right?
Hassan, Triple G gets in. Trust me.
If Andre Ward's in, I think Triple G should get in.
But I mean,
look at
there's the
Canelo
thing.
where he's at. He's considered the pound for pound #1 guy. And to be honest, Triple G, we all know this. I mean, how many times does it have to be repeated? He got the draw, but he deserved to win the first one. And the second one, you call it what you will. I think most people
That was
thought he
his
won,
unofficial
actually.
first win.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, though. What happened with that, he gave Canelo his toughest challenge. Look at how everybody else has been faring against Canelo.
Yep.
And just goes to show, the type of caliber of fighter he is.
That's why I Triple G haters, even more than Lomachenko haters, I have a real issue with because of the reasons, I mean, just let's be honest. He was the first of the Eastern Europeans really to gain the foothold, even a little before Kovalev, about the same time, but he caught a brunt of the hate. And a lot of that was generated from SOG, Son of God, with his ridiculous little G and that absolute lie that Triple G ducked him. That never happened. We don't have to get into that, but that never happened. That was just the same thing he's doing right now with Canelo. The same thing right now. The fact that if I was ESPN, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't mind SOG, Andre Ward as an announcer. I really don't. But after his little rant, his little diatribe after that fucking fight, to actually compare what Davis is doing, Gervonta Davis is doing to Canelo. You got one guy fighting hand-picked no-hopers. And when I say no-hopers, I mean Vegas odds no-hopers. And that kid Cruz, Isaac Cruz, that little gnome, that dude was a Vegas odds no-hoper. He was a 12-1 underdog. Okay? That was a big fucking stretch. And for him to go life and death, but anyways.
Apparently, he thought Beterbiev looked beatable just because he got a gash from a headbutt. And he kept battling. He kept putting the beats on this dude, Marcus Brown. All of a sudden,
funny, he's beatable. But when you were 32 years old, he sent your ass into retirement. And there's other things about Andre Ward. Again, the fact that he would not fight unless he had absolutely every possible thing his way, from the ring, location, ring size, the thickness of the pad, the gloves the people could wear. He I mean, obviously, everybody knows that even that tournament, he would always be at home fights for him. Never went on the road. He was always the home fighter. He always had all the home cooking, and he still didn't draw. And what happened was, well, he was in his litigation issues with Joe Goosen during that whole fucking fiasco. Another guy who just reneged on a contract he signed. Well, that was all going on. HBO realized, holy shit, this fucking Kazakhstan kid that we took a long shot on just fucking knocks people out and is exciting. Next you know, Triple G became the face of HBO boxing when it was supposed to be Andre Ward, and he didn't take it lightly. And fucking he went after him, and he bashed the shit out of him publicly, and he said stuff about him, and that sent the African American, they were big on Ward, that sent all them after him, that gave him all the fuel they needed to go after him. And he's never really got over that. Like, it's just, that's a loud,
like Jimmy was saying, like Jimmy was saying, he was an injured, inactive fighter with no representation when he said, yeah, I'll fight him if nobody else will. Well, that's great. I mean, you're an Olympian and a professional fighter. We're glad to hear that you will say that you will fight someone. But I mean, again, this big thing that Triple G ducked him. One, I don't remember a single contract ever being mentioned. Ward said they went into quote-unquote negotiations. He's never said they gave him a contract with an offer of a monetary amount ever in any interview that I've heard of. Now, if there's one out there, feel free to prove me wrong, but I've heard nothing. And again, he just said it at ringside one night after a fight. Well, if nobody else will fight him, I'll fight. Great, but you were still injured, inactive, and had no representation. So how could that fight get made? You had no manager. You weren't your own manager yet. You had no promoter because, like you said, he was arguing with Goosen. Rock Nation hasn't signed him yet. So are you going to let the K2 Promotions and the Klitschko's promote this fight while you're still in arbitration? I don't even know if that's legal.
Well, when he first made that call out, when he first said, I'll fight Triple G at 168, he was in a training camp to fight Paul Smith. That was in the middle of training camp. So he's probably feeling good. Now, here's the thing, though. He was signed at first to fight Paul Smith at 168 pounds. It was in that camp that he realized, holy shit, I can't get to 168. He's the one who demanded
and he went to 172.
172. So here's a guy saying, I'll fight him at 168. Now, there's all these little factors come into play. Now, remember when he said he'll fight Kovalev, when that said, okay, before the first one, he said, I've been out of a while. So you're going to tell me that you needed 3 warm-ups, it ended up being 3 warm-ups for Kovalev, but you were going to go 2 years out of the ring at an emaciated weight that by your own admission you couldn't fucking get to. You're going to fight Triple G, who hits every bit as hard as Kovalev with better skills, overall skills, better balance, takes a much better shot, obviously. But you're going to go against fucking Triple G with a warm-up? Bullshit. He would have needed at least a warm-up, maybe 2. So now it's not just one fight that you're going to fight at 168, a weight by your own admission you can't get to. You're going to fight 3 in a row. And this is a guy who did nothing unless it was beneficial to him. So no fucking way. And again, after the Paul Smith fight, within 6 months, Burton is his name, the reporter who asked him, so what's up? You're going to go back down to 168? He burst in the 168, 175 is getting hard to make. Nah, I'll never see 168 again. That was within 6 months of him saying, oh, I'll fight Triple G at 168. That was him being a windbag. And I think his comments about Davis and Canelo, as embarrassing as they were, I think that leads credence to the fact it's like, okay, so you really were just blowing smoke. That's what you do. You get angry, you get jealous. Because remember, 2019, what did Kovalev say? There's no way Canelo's going to fight Beterbiev. No way. There's nothing in it for him. No way. Because he knew he bailed at 32 instead of fighting him. So all of a sudden, now the rumors are after this kid at cruiserweight, he's going to go down and fight Beterbiev, or he's going to fight one of, so that's Canelo. Now he's like, what the fuck, this guy? So not only is he doing something you said he would never do, and that's the word he used, he will never fight Beterbiev. So he goes up, unifies a division that you campaigned at for 12 years. He goes and unifies it within a year. Now he's going to fight the guy that chased you into retirement. So that was all that was. It was jealous. vitriol. And he's an angry kid anyways. He's the last American to win a gold medal, and he couldn't fucking sell sand to an Arab. Mind that,
Nope.
I know that's
He
probably
couldn't even.
politically correct now.
Well,
But-
yeah, but your point is he couldn't, like, when he fought Kessler in his own hometown, the arena wasn't sold out that night. You're absolutely right. Now let's get back over to Triple G for a second. I'm going over to his career. Since he won the belt, he fought a top contender, Nelson Dieppe, former world champion Kasim Uma, top contender, Luan Simon. I'm skipping a few names here and there. Fought a Proska. James Kirkland. He fights top contender Matthew Macklin. He fights top contender Curtis Stevens. He fights top contender. I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. I guess I'm about to start need glasses. Asamoah. Then he beats Daniel Gili, two-time middleweight champion. He fights Marco Rubio, top contender and former interim champion. He fights Martin Murray, a top contender, and gave Martinez every can handle. He beats top contender Willie Monroe. He beats former champion and David Lemieux. He fights undefeated contender Dominic Wade. He fights undefeated welterweight champion Kell Brook, who was considered the best welterweight in the world at the time, even though there's two weight classes below him. And then he fights the champion in a unification fight in Daniel Jacobs, and that's before his career starts going south. So to the people that say he hasn't fought anybody, he doesn't have the names, that tells me you don't follow the intricacies of boxing.
Yeah. I mean, there's people there that like really don't really follow along. They just want to go off by their own favorite fighters, quotes. And to me, with Ward, it's like him running like him and his fans is running with that narrative that he ducked Ward, and I'm
Plus all those titles.
there's a clear conflict of interest that I seem to recall that I try to bring up to people, but once again, there's no reasoning. I can't really talk about it unless I have to be a pro black fight fan. I'm like, nah, man, I'm not gonna go that route. You just have to attack these issues with nuance, and fair is fair. So bullshit, boxing is a global.
And also he's still a reigning champion, and just on excitement alone, he's more entertaining than most of the boxers in this generation. That's why he sells a lot, because he's always looking for the knockout. He's got power. He can take a shot. The whole phrase Mexican style, which probably is not actually kind of exact. It's not, but I mean, that just tells you that he's got that seek and destroy style, though. Anyhow, so he's an exciting fighter.
Because they would basically liken him to Julio Cesar Chavez, and Chavez even called him his son at one point.
Son, he wish he had. Speaking of his son, right? Chavez's son. What do you guys think about him fighting Jake Paul?
I don't.
The Granite Chin, man.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably.
It's like every boxer is attaching their name to Jake Paul, and I wish they would stop.
It's a clown show. The dude is a fucking just a novice boxer, a kid with money that decided to take boxing, and maybe he's taking a risk against Chavez. Maybe Chavez can still beat. Who knows?
That might be his best fight. The best he's ever fought is Chavez Jr. Because
Chavez won a world title.
That's probably the most competent fighter he's ever faced at this point. But
of course, he's the only real boxer.
Yeah, because he's been taking L's left and right. Doing that in MMA. He's decided all of a sudden he's a boxer now. Yeah, no, you're not gonna phone me with that. But if he takes on Chavez, you know what? I'll give him the credit if he actually beats him, because this kid Chavez Jr. was supposed to be like the heir apparent and didn't quite live up to it. So whatever, go at it, man. I don't give a fuck.
Well, he says he's gonna. He says he'll never fight again. Never fight again if he loses to Jake Paul. And to Jake Paul's defense, not that I'm a Jake Paul fan, but I don't blame him for the worldly fight. The rematch, by the way, tanked. I guess the numbers were horrible. for that fight, which is kind of the reason why I think Jake Paul realizes now even more than ever. And again, Tommy Fury, how the fuck that kid lives down, he pulled out of that fight. I would never take that kid serious ever. But Chavez, as much of a fucking joke as he is, as much of an insult as he is to his father's name and the Mexican people, he still is a world champion, right? And for somebody, I mean, we're going to really see how serious Jake Paul is taking
Jimmy.
boxing. Yes, brother.
Yeah, my internet's really bad. But the problem with Chavez, it is because I got the portable Wi-Fi here in the hospital.
Listen, if you take
the problem
if you
with
take,
Chavez, the problem with Chavez is that he's washed up and he doesn't let his hands go for some reason. It's like he's almost waiting for like the perfect shot. So he shells up. Then when he goes on the offensive, yeah, he closes the distance, but he's kind of like waiting to land the perfect shot. And while he's waiting, that passes him by. He gets hit, and he doesn't find the perfect shot. And the rounds keep going past.
he's a clown. He's a
rounds keep
Gonzalo,
passing on.
Gonzalo, he's been looking for his perfect shot since the
This
Martinez fight.
dude could be fucking beat easily. What he's fighting is, I gotta be honest, either fixed opposition or fucking guys that don't know what the fuck they're doing. They don't know what they're doing.
It's the lighter record.
But you guys can acknowledge, you guys can acknowledge that sometimes in a fighter's career, when he gets the fight beat out of him, he just can't let his hands go.
Yeah, I
Right?
mean,
At
I
some
could
point
see
in time.
Chavez saying, "Just give me some money, and I won't come in there to win."
Fight? He didn't know what the fuck to do. This is your big chance. Listen. This is what HBO did for him. HBO basically put him there to basically get boxed his ears off.
The problem with Chavez has always been this. Like Gonzalo said, he doesn't let his hands go. I mean, if you look at the Silva fight, he's fighting a guy in his 40s who's not even a real boxer. And he's not letting his hands go. He's always been a lazy guy. He's always gotten by on talent and PEDs and the fact that the commission's always protected him. And even then, he couldn't even win outright. Remember that he would go in juiced and all that, and he would still struggle to win fights? I mean, this guy, Chavez, he's a real boxer in the sense that he's been through the grinder, he's had world-class experience, he's been in the world-class guys, and he's got an iron chin, but he doesn't have the heart of a fighter, as cliched as it may sound. That being said, I think it was Recognized who said, by the way, Recognized, thank you for the super chat, man, really appreciate it.
No problem.
Jake Paul, you're right. There is a blueprint to beat this guy, and that is to just pressure him. Because look, the power for Jake Paul is real, but the work rate and his cardio, whatever, is a joke. The guy throws 3 shots and then has to clinch and take a deep breath because he just doesn't have that. I don't even know if he's sprinting or something. I think he's just those.
He's fighting in 8 rounders. He doesn't have the gas tank for 12 rounds.
Looks like a fat build. You ever see a guy?
Yes.
When he's younger, in his 20s, he's chiseled. He's but when he gets older, like late 30s, 40s, he starts getting some fat on him, right?
Yeah, every time I look in the mirror.
That's what he is. This dude fights are not. They're just a mockery of boxing. And what happened with Tyrone Woodley, that other guy, getting knocked out like that? Like, dude, come on, man. That fucking guy just sat there and watched that punch come. Couldn't do anything.
The guy, you got to remember, recognize, Woodley's not a boxer. He knocks people out in MMA because they got to watch out for the takedown, the kicks, and all that. Take all that away. He's only got his 2 slow hands. That's all he's got. 2 slow hands that he can't reach. He couldn't reach Jake Paul. And the fact, I mean, it was embarrassing because at least he was a professional combat guy. He still couldn't do much to Jake Paul. But they think about it. Everything has been, they don't really need to rig the fights yet for Jake Paul because look at who he's fought. A basketball player, a wrestler in, what was the other guy's name with the afro there?
Aztec, Ben Aztec.
He's technically a wrestler. He's one of the worst strikers in MMA. Then you put him against Woodley, who only has a big right hand in MMA, not in boxing. And he was supposed to take on Fury, but then he dropped down. So far, it's all about matchmaking. This kid, I think he's got great PR people. I think he's surrounding himself with people that know boxing, and they're the ones that are telling him.
You know something, and you're right, because when he was supposed to fight Tommy Fury, I had no idea. I think it was Outlaw Boxing who was telling me this. It might have been him. I think it was him. And he said, yeah, but you do realize, I'm like, that's a risk fighting a boxer. He's like, yeah, but you do realize like Tommy Fury is like Tyson Fury's half brother from a different mom. The guy just took up boxing because his brother has a. So I was like, oh, okay, now it makes more sense. So he's fighting another boxing novice, right? A guy who's like into his looks and shit like that. And his brother is, is Tyson Fury. That's basically all it is. And so it's him fighting guys that he knows more likely he's going to beat. And there's a lot of money on the line, and so that's all it is.
You know what? I got to give credit to his team. Yeah, it's the marketing, because like the way his boxing fights turn out, it's like he's just doing it for the memes. Like, yo, I just knocked you out, so I'm gonna make a gif out of you the next day, and they're matching up correctly the way they should. And it's funny that you mentioned about how a certain person has a history of looking chiseled. This guy Jake Paul never looked chiseled. When I seen his younger photos of him, he looks fat. He's basically a fat dude.
He's a chunk.
Yeah, his older brother Logan Paul. Yeah, that's the guy who works out. But Jake Paul was kind of on the chubbier side. So yeah, he just started getting fit, and now you're seeing the effects of it. Like, yo, he's breathing in a lot of air, man. And if Chavez could just do what he's supposed to do, like just let his hand go, which I haven't seen him do since the Martinez fight. If you look at that fight, that dude never shows up for nothing. He had to wait for that big right hand, and he finally caught him in the 12th round, finally. So it's up to him if he wants to push the pace on Jake Paul.
There's another problem too. His conditioning is not good because he's got a problem with his nasal passages. It happened in the Jacobs fight, and in this fight he had against Serafa. He was taking some illegal substances to clear the airways. So he's kind of in the same boat as Jake Paul. He doesn't let his hands go, but he's affected in his nasal passages.
Yeah,
maybe because of the cocaine.
He said he was going to retire if he loses him. He should have retired after that Jacobs fight. I thought that was a fucking mockery of the sport. That was a real mockery to me. The way he performed, and he just quit.
Well, I just gotta say too, man. I know that Dana White, people are saying that he is beside himself. No more. He's like, anybody even comes to me with the I want to go and box, they're damn, because the MMA. All right, for years we've all heard it, right? MMA fans, those fucking grappling fans. Fuck, you don't have no idea, man. Any top fucking MMA guy could step into boxing right now and give anybody a tough night. I think Jake Paul beating all these dudes up, whether they were strikers, known for striking or not, they were still professional fighters. And a YouTuber is knocking them out. Although the YouTuber is spending 10-week camps down in fucking Puerto Rico, surrounded by 4 ex-fucking champions training him. So he's having real camps. He's sparring. He's going through everything a real boxer goes through, but he still hasn't fought a real boxer. And Chavez, as much of a stiff as he is, if he beats them, that gives him credit because he fought a real boxer. What's okay if he was to go the regular boxer's route? What would you credit him more right now? Fighting and beating Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. or Mike Puffer, who's 8 wins and 37 losses? Because that's the type of person he would fight if he was go the regular boxing route. He'd be fighting guys with 3 wins and 14 losses. So people that nobody ever heard of, gym rats who just are paying in $500 to give somebody a fucking few rounds. So the fact that Chavez is still much better than those clowns. Not that they're clowns, but you know what I'm saying. My terminology isn't good, but the fact he's still going right to somebody who won a fucking championship, all those things. Doesn't let his hands go. He sucks. He's an embarrassment. I agree with everything everybody just said, every descriptor, but he's still better than a 3-40 fighter. And that's who Jake Paul, if he's going to fight him, but again, Jake Paul's a bigger kid than, Chavez. Chavez really should have probably never fought more than 170 if he wasn't a lazy slob. Jake Paul walks around at like 220 pounds. He fights at like 190. He's a big kid. He's never gotten ripped down because he's never had to, because these imbeciles have chosen weights. Instead of Woodley, for instance, should have said, no, I'll fight 175 and made Jake Paul strip down in weight. It's on top of just fighting these guys. He's fighting guys at the weight he knows he's most comfortable at. You know what I mean? So I think that'll be a big difference. But again, I don't even know what's the weight credit if they're going at. I believe it's supposed to be at 190. Regardless, Jake Paul is going to run the show. Like he's the A-list. Isn't that crazy? But everything will be up to him because he's the one he's running the promotion because he's the one signed to Showtime, fucking all that other shit, not Chavez. So it's going to be the weight he chooses. But yes,
another thing. Yeah, Chavez Sr., by the age of 32, I believe Chavez Jr. is 32 or 33. Chavez Sr. was done by that time. The lifestyle that Sr. lived, doing the drugs and, fighting a lot also, taking a lot of shots. Kind of Jr.'s in the same boat. He's taking a lot of shots. He's lived the party life, and he's 32, 33. By that age, Sr. was losing to Willie Wise, fighters of that caliber, lower level.
Hey, but Gonzalo,
anything could happen.
Do you think banging Selma Hayek gave him a couple of years back?
Of course. Fountain of youth.
Oh, yeah. Imagine dumping a fucking children off across those cheeks.
Who Selma Hayek?
Julio Cesar Sr.
Yeah.
They say like an old cat loves tender mice.
It's fucking old sayings, man. No, but Jimmy, it's interesting you said that. I didn't know that the Jake Paul thing didn't even do good numbers.
Yeah, no, the second Woodley fight didn't do numbers at all. Well, it was nobody really wanted to see that fight. He already blew him out. He already knocked the dude out. And again, like you said, an MMA fighter, because an MMA fighter, like put it this way, a boxer always gets hurt when they go in an MMA cage because somebody shoots for their waist or they kick them in the fucking thigh. Something they never see in boxing. So you as an MMA fighter, you still, as you're squaring up to somebody, you're just not focusing just on the hands, whether you're trying to or not. Just out of muscle memory, you're going to be thinking about the legs, taking the shoot, all that other shit. So it's the reason why MMA guys don't do well in a boxing ring. And he left his left hand down, and Jake Paul just caught him.
And also, I think they're mostly chin happy. So it's like they're not cut off for that because they're like, all right, if you, I don't know what's more impactful. This like the MMA gloves or boxing gloves, but like if you're, I figured that if you're getting hit by a smaller glove, I'm like, surely something with bigger mass would probably hurt you a lot more, right?
Well, I've been punched by both, and I'll tell you right now, I'd much rather get punched by a fucking MMA glove.
Yeah,
much more. Yeah, the reason being, well, you get cut more with the MMA glove, and that's by design. I personally, my heart believe that is blood cells, and White likes when his guys are bleeding because it's just blood cells. But
just bleed.
Okay, it's when now if you think right, it's the weight of the padding. Okay, a boxing glove, because now figure your fingers aren't individually sewn. It's a mitten. So as you're punching, right, that material will spread from the knuckles into the lower back part of your hands and even forward. So when you open your hands all the way up with a boxing glove, you'll see an indentation where the knuckles are because the padding's no longer there by the end of the fight. With an MMA glove, that cannot happen because the stitching is so tight all around it. That padding is the same thickness at 1 second of the first round to 10 seconds left in the fifth round. The padding doesn't change because of the shape of the glove.
Wow. Yeah, man. I remember there used to have, I don't even know who thought in the right mind to put that there, but at my gym, somebody had once left a pair of headgear that had visors, plastic visors. And I tried them once, just out of curiosity. I took them off as soon as I took a jab because the whole thing, you just hit the plastic visor and your whole head shakes and it hurt. The skull hurts. So sometimes the things that people believe are there to protect you or that look like they're more protective are actually more hurtful. And the same thing with those big ass gloves. I mean, they proved it in the Discovery Channel segment with Bas Rutten where he's trying different types of gloves, MMA gloves and some other gloves, blah, blah, and then boxing gloves. The boxing gloves actually cause more damage from the way of gauging it. So, yeah, man, boxing gloves, that's
exactly
those type of shots.
Man. Talking about my favorite fighter, Jake Paul.
And then another thing too, BDA is the fucking
Evan loves Jake Paul.
with the boxing gloves, yeah. So yeah, I saw that same thing with Rutan. Yes, it does. With a boxer, their hands are also wrapped. That makes such a fucking difference because but just makes
I'm
your
not.
hands. Now think about this, guys, and Gonzalo, you know about this too. Up until what 1984, I believe was the year. I might be off, and I think it might have been 84. They changed to allow. They stopped using cotton. They used to use cotton and yeah, dude. So by the end of it would turn into a cast. Guys used to wrap their hands and then stick them in buckets of warm water and then wrap them. You know what I mean? Like put the gloves on because then it would get them all fucking mushy and it would be like a cast. It would harden like a cast. And by the end of the fucking fight, it was just a piece of leather covering your knuckles. So gloves, boxing gloves, damage does hurt more and causes more damage than MMA gloves. People think because they're smaller, but it's the padding. What's I don't know the correct word.
Distribution, right?
Distribution. Thank you. It doesn't dissipate away from the knuckles because there's nowhere for it to go. The problem is the pokes in the eyes. That's what sucks. Those fingers someone always sticks you in the eye with that loose fucking fingers.
Yeah, even like a sparring glove will do a lot of damage too because it's really wide and it it rings
They're
your belt
bigger.
more because it rings your belt that much more.
And if it's the
Bounces you
gym
all over the
gloves,
place.
and if it's the gym
'cause there's
gloves, they're
only-
always worn out too. They're always been used so many times. There's no padding at the knuckle.
Yep.
There's one thing I gotta say about Jake Paul, and I'm not gonna lie, this is true. Because I saw the two brothers already. And when I saw the Jake Paul guy, I said to myself, that guy can punch. Even before he had knocked out like the last three guys, the first time he knocked out that one guy, just the way he delivered that right hand, I said, this guy's more of a puncher than his brother. He's a better fighter. Just because he's a
Yeah,
YouTuber
yes.
doesn't mean that he's limited to like, oh, he's a YouTuber, he can't fight. No, it's free will. You know, he's got the ability just like any other human being.
Yep.
It was a four-star,
Hey, what's up, guys?
four-letter
Hear
athlete.
me?
What's going on? Who's this? Kevin?
This is K-Dog.
Kato, what's up, kid?
Okay.
Nothing much. Hey, you're talking about my favorite fighter, so I had to chime in, Jake Paul.
Fire away, Kevin.
The thing I keep hearing is he got to fight a boxer. He's got to fight a boxer. Well, the thing is, Jake Paul, he's not a boxer. Like, this dude was a high school wrestler, and then he started boxing for, what is he? It's been 3 years. This idea that, like, Tyron Woodley, he's a wrestler. Like, they don't train boxing in MMA. Of course they train boxing. They have boxing coaches, and they go in there, they put the big gloves on, and they train boxing specifically. So this idea that he's just a wrestler, he never trained boxing. They train boxing in MMA all the time. They hire boxing coaches that are specialized in boxing. They get in the boxing ring with the ropes, and they spar with boxers. Marvin Vittori, he's got pictures up. He's sparring with David Benavidez. GSP trains with Freddie Roach. This idea that MMA fighters, they don't train boxing, they train MMA. They train everything. And that's a big misconception. So this is the thing is, they're both wrestlers. Jake Paul was a high school wrestler. Woodley was a college wrestler. And Woodley's been training boxing for a long time. Like, I went to a wrestling camp years ago, and Woodley was there hitting mitts with boxing gloves in, hitting mitts with the boxing gloves on, training specifically boxing. He wasn't there throwing kicks or wrestling. He was sitting
Was
there
it really?
throwing hands.
Did you really go to Fat Camp and he was a special guest for that day? Or
Nope, it was a wrestling camp. And guess who else was there? Michael Chandler was there. I know you know Michael Chandler, Tyron Woodley.
And there was Kevin from Chicago also. He was there.
Yes, sir. That's right.
but
Recognize.
I agree with what you're saying that they're not. But that point still stands. They're not real boxers because they're still spreading themselves a little too thin sometimes. These MMA guys, and you know when you get a guy like Woodley, you get when he was an MMA guy at the top of his game over there, you got to wonder how much boxing was he really training. He's not like Jimmy said. He's not spending 10-week training camps just drilling boxing.
Grande Gonzalo.
Yeah, but he's got years of experience training boxing ahead of Paul. Like he's like all his years training MMA, he's got more experience with the boxing than Jake Paul. 3 years or whatever it is. Like, he's been 15 years in MMA. So the thing is, Jake Paul, he's not a boxer. Like, Jake Paul's not a boxer. I don't think anyone would argue that. The dude's he's a novice. He's a novice picking up this sport, and the fact that he's going in there and knocking out a former champion is pretty impressive. Now, if he goes in there with someone like Anderson Silva, he's going to get beat down because those are guys that are his
think Anderson
size.
Silva will beat him up? You think he would?
Oh yeah, Anderson Silva. He'll be on the special supplements, and he'll give him some big problems.
Well, do you guys know T.J. Dillashaw? I'm sure you guys have heard his name. The UFC, the bantamweight.
Yes, sir.
Well, he's sparred a bunch of times with Lomachenko. Well,
Yes, sir.
they call this sparring. And Dillashaw said he goes, it was so humbling. I saw an interview with him. He said, I considered myself amongst the UFC guys. I was good boxer. I get the headgear on being there, and everybody like, wow, dude, you could be a boxer. He said, so of course you hear that. And he goes, I stepped in with Lomachenko, and he said, wow. I fucking am not a boxer. Like he said, it was like watching him be like being a guitarist and watching a fucking famous guitarist do his shit. It's just that's how good he is. So that's why I always respect guys like Lomachenko, because other people who know that praise him.
Lomachenko, he's a wrestler too. You see him training wrestling?
Yep. Oh, yeah. That was his father's gig. His father was a wrestler when he was young. That was his father's sport. And his father's a strength and conditioning guy now.
His father's a nut job. He looks like a weirdo to me. But I was going to say that Lomachenko, there's a clip of Lomachenko sparring Dillashaw. And apparently, I think it was Dillashaw who said that the clip that's circulating on YouTube is actually the best he had. It's like it's in that clip, that's the best he did. So imagine what happened in the clips we haven't seen. It's like this guy got schooled, and it's normal. I mean, Lomachenko, fucking pound for pounder. That's what pound for pounders do to guys that train, 3 times a week in boxing or 4 times a week.
I heard he tripped twice over him, spun him to the ground without touching him. Like just when kind of like how he just stepped sides and Dillashaw literally fell right over his feet.
Right.
Because that's what happens when you fight someone like him. Yeah. It's crazy.
Lomachenko makes elite boxers look silly. Imagine what he's going to do an MMA striker.
Right, exactly.
I mean, just to give you the idea of how there's levels.
When
I was fighting, real quick, when I got into boxing, about 3 years in, there was this guy who was the best guy in the gym, right? An amateur. He told me that when he was, I think, 5 years into boxing, he was an amateur. He'd compete in the Golden Gloves. He was pretty good, man. He made us look like fools. He spars this guy. You guys remember Yoshim Alcin, right? He's the guy that got he beat Travis Sims for the WBA title. Yeah, so he goes in there against the amateur. He goes, all right, listen, I'm just gonna work defense, so just come at me. And the amateur goes, just come at me. Like, what? He thinks it's gonna be easy? Couldn't hit him. The amateur, he couldn't hit Yoshim Alcin. Now, what does that tell? Yoshim Alcin is not even a fucking. He's a world class. He was a top 10 guy at the time. So that just goes through. He wasn't even the best. He wasn't even pound for pound. So like Johnny, Kevin said, I imagine that's why Lomachenko, he makes other boxers look foolish. Imagine what he would do to top-notch amateurs or MMA guys. It's like, he'll just dance around them if he wants.
So I saw this photo. I think it was on the BDA Discord. I think there was a current UFC champion by the name of Brandon Moreno. It was like the first ever Mexican-born MMA champion for the UFC. I saw him, in a photo with Nonito Donaire. And I would like to see them, to be a fly in the wall, see them, like spar, just see what that would look like, man. A 125 guy against a guy who's already like 7 pounds lighter and it's already killing it, at an advanced age, man.
Yeah, with Brandon, the Moreno guy, he's from Tijuana, so I bet you. I've been here for a while, so I don't know that guy, but I bet you he's got some boxing experience too. Brandon Moreno. Yeah. He's from TJ. There's a lot of boxing gyms in TJ.
Well, can I just say something? You mentioned Donaire. Can we just cover that for 1 second? I wanted to talk about. I
Sure.
forgot my list. Did you guys hear how many tickets they sold for that fight at the bowl in L.A. where there was all those great fights? That Triple G fight, he had that good one there. It's so crazy sellouts there.
1,500.
I heard it was 800 tickets.
Ay.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry. What the fuck, 800? I heard it was 80 tickets they sold. That whole I heard there was
Said
more
8,000?
people there. No, I heard 80. It was either 8. Yeah, it was like 80 tickets. No, I'm dead serious. They comped like fucking 300. There was more people who worked for the company and evolved around the boxing event and the people working for the stadium than they sold tickets. It was a fucking joke.
This is California. They require
California,
jab, right? But they
No
require
way.
getting the jab and all that, right?
but they
Yeah,
also
yeah.
required the jab at LA, right? For Santa Cruz, they still pulled 15,000 people in LA at the Staples Center
Oh, shit.
the night before. I mean, the next night, because it was. So think about that. No, I have to look. It was some they didn't advertise it. They just go right in there. They don't even he has no money. He's a fucking legitimate champion. One of the nicest guys in boxing. One of the guys from the PBC you're pulling for to see him do well.
Listen,
You know what I mean?
Jimmy,
And
I
they
gotta
didn't
say
put any
this.
money behind him. Yes.
I gotta say this, man, but him and Rachel Donaire should have just took it on the chin. Whatever the fuck, Knucklehead Sean and fucking this motherfucker Casemiro just said about them, take it on the chin and just make the fight, because that would have made him some money if that's the case. I thought it was like some next level pettiness to basically say, you know what, good luck with Rigondeaux, who's gonna make you look foolish, and you're not gonna make that much money. But I would have paid to see that fight. I'm just saying.
He can take it in the chin, though, for sure.
Yeah.
It's a shame for Donaire, man, because like Jimmy said, he had a great year, man. He had 2 knockout wins over younger guys, and Ubali and Payano or whatever his name was weren't exactly the pound for pound best, but I mean, think about it. For a guy Donaire who was considered to be washed up, years ago,
Yeah.
it's pretty gosh darn impressive. So hopefully they
At
match him up.
39.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
That should be old. That should be really old, especially for that weight
Yeah.
class. And remember, he even went up as far as featherweight. He went up to 126.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
for him to go back down that age to 118 and
Unheard of.
looks unreal at that weight class.
Remember,
Son,
Hank,
I never heard of it.
He definitely blew me away in that WBSS tournament. Dude definitely had the rabbit's foot. I thought, I'm like, man, he's just turning back the clock, man. And I really like that final he had with
Well,
Inouye.
Yeah.
Well, you said
To me, that's
you
right
said-
now. That's the safest bet at 118, because I don't know what's going on there. It's a lot of stagnation.
You said the rabbit's foot. He kind of got lucky to get into the finals because I think one of the opponents fell out. Or I'm not saying that he couldn't have beat those guys. He probably would have anyhow.
Around
Yeah.
the net, something like that. Yeah.
Gonzalo, like you guys,
yeah, he beat that dude where he pulled up rib muscle or whatever the fuck it was. Remember that Australian guy or British?
Barnett.
Yeah, Ryan Burnett.
And then he was supposed to fight
Yes.
Tete. But Tete
Yeah, and that's true.
Yeah.
True.
yeah, but to recognize his point though, when I was a young man, you were at that weight class, you were down by 30. You were an old motherfucker if you were past 30. Just because that weight class just never aged. It just never did. Never mind, to your point, to go up in weight, come back down is unheard of. And then to do all this before almost 40 years old at that weight. That's why Al Bernstein, the night of that fight, was so blown away by what he just seems like. This just doesn't happen. Guys don't come back and gain a second wind at this age at any weight class. Never mind these little weights. And so and he's a good guy. He showed nothing but class. He didn't want to celebrate until the kid was all right, to make sure he was all right, with the stomach shot. But just the way he speaks, he's just a class act. He's really a family guy. boxing's in dire need for good people. There's too many fucking douchebags, especially stateside.
Yeah.
And to see him get that little respect, but that goes to show you there was no promotion. Everybody in LA area was saying like nobody heard about that fight. I'm trying to find it right now online. I could have swore it was like 82 seats were actually sold. It was some crazy number. Somebody sent me a picture during the the announcing, Donaire in this corner. So this is the main event in the ring, and they sent a picture of the place, and it's fucking empty. When I tell you empty, it looks like it was the first night of a fucking 7 fucking fight night. You know what I mean? And it was the first night when nobody shows up the first fight. It was that few people there. I'll get the picture. I'll send it. It was crazy. Just the level of disrespect Al Heyman's giving these guys.
Jimmy,
What I can say to that, Jimmy, what I can say to that, let me tell you real quick. Not everybody can draw like Jake Paul. That's just the way it is. Not everybody's to draw like Jake Paul.
Jimmy, I've been watching a lot of fights from the 80s and 70s lately to kill some time, because I didn't grow up around that era. But I have been watching Rich the Historian. You know, a lot of the fighters from back then, they were real respectful. Real respectful, man. Real gracious characters. Like, who one comes to mind? Even Sonny Liston, man. He was like, he didn't speak a lot, but he wasn't really like an asshole or anything.
They couldn't be. They couldn't be because
that video? Did you see
that
video? Did you see that video Thomas Sowell posted on his YouTube channel about 4 months ago? I think it was 4 months ago.
I haven't.
He says the decline of that boxing. What's it called? Something along the lines of boxing as the image of decline of American society. And he has Joe Louis on one side, and then the other he's got Jake Paul. Now I know Kevin's not gonna like this, but what Sowell is saying is that if you looked at boxing from the 1930s, granted that was generations ago, different world really, but they were respectful. They wore trunks that weren't all that flashy. It was a standard white or black. They didn't celebrate all that much. There weren't hundreds and hundreds of people in the ring, during the announcement of the fight or after the announcement of the decision. There weren't that many douchebags. I mean, I understand it sells, and let's face the facts. We all like a talker to a certain degree. We all need boxing does need the trash talker, but
like Ernie Shavers, BDA, they would recognize when they would lose too. They would just say, like I saw an Ernie Shavers interview. I think it was last night or the day before. He was the better man today, and just the way that their voice sounds, it resonates because you can tell that they were honest and good people.
You gotta tell me the society is morally declined or something? Is that what you're trying to say? No way.
No way. It's gotten better. Come on, man. Let's be honest.
By the way, Thomas Sowell,
America's a freak show. It's always been.
Yeah. Thomas Sowell should do more narration. He's got the perfect voice for narration, man. He sounds a little bit like, not quite like the guy who played Darth Vader. The guy who did the voice. What was his name? Almost.
Edward James
Earl Jones.
Earl Jones.
Yeah, I don't know.
He also played that. Remember that thing when he was in Conan? He was the bad guy. He had that disgusting big gun.
Yep.
Bro, you have the worst.
I mean, what I'm trying to get at.
He always had a voice of authority, right? Like when you heard him speak.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That guy? I just posted the picture, guys, in the chat there in the stream. Well, where you post the pictures, I don't actually know what it's called, but that's the what do they call it now? They changed it. Used to be called, I can't remember. They changed it so many times. But look at how empty that place is. That picture's taken while they're announcing the headline, while they're in the ring.
This is Donaire's last fight, right? You're talking about?
3 weeks ago, yes, sir. In LA, in that fucking bowl where Triple G had that mad sellout in 10 minutes, and it was against when he punched the kid in the top of the head, the Mexican kid. I believe it was there too. It was, he had some he had some notorious fights there, but just crazy sellouts, like the rafters. Well, they don't have rafters, but all the way up. But take a look at that picture. Look at that. That's the headline is being announced. So you can't say, well, it's the beginning of the fucking card, or everybody's at the fucking piss line. The fighters are being announced, so that means everybody's at their seats, and there's nobody there. There's literally nobody there. and that's a fucking first ballot Hall of Famer fighting in a
Oh,
community
man,
that has a lot of Filipinos.
Yeah, it's just a shame that
Yeah, I
there
think
was no promotion for you guys.
I think that's a common problem today. Is like boxing has an outreach problem, and it's like the whole business landscape of the sport is like fragmented. So, it's tough to get correspondence, with other networks and promoters trying to get these fights being made, because they're all about themselves. It's all about self interest, it's a shame. It's a shame, but you know what? Uh, we're all gonna die soon. Fuck it. There's a meter coming. If anybody's seen that movie, Don't Look Up, there's your decline right there. It's not just America. It's the world, man.
Gosh, don't
People are
tell
just
me you
off.
didn't just say that. Tell
I,
me
I
you didn't just
I
say
heard that
that.
movie was
I saw that movie the other night too. Yeah, 2 nights ago I saw that. I was on
Yeah.
I
fucking
predicted it.
Netflix.
I predicted this a
That's
long
pure
time ago.
propaganda. That's pure propaganda. Can't believe
Well-
you even referenced that.
Yeah.
Something's gonna hit. I don't know what it's gonna be, but something.
Yeah.
Hit.
Well, I'll make a prediction right now. And I'm going to say if the sport survives anywhere near its same contents that it is now, fighters in 5 years from now will be lucky to see, champions will be lucky to be seeing $1 million. Because it's going to be, there's the same in any economy. When you overinflate money, you're paying $8 a gallon for gasoline and everything falls apart. The same thing, listen, the DAZN, it's a comedy of errors. $750 million comes dumping in from the PBC. He overpays his fighters to try to put everybody else out of business. The problem is when he didn't put everybody out of business, he still overpaid his fighters. Now you got all these PBC guys who fight once, twice, every 3 years because they want X amount of dollars. In order to do that, it's limited space. And right now, the zone, he's already come out and said it. Yes, the free spending days of the zone are done. We're not going to be doing that anymore. So you're going to see it right now. Look at how many fights aren't getting made just because of money. All right, White Fury. We didn't even touch on that. I know it might not be a popular subject, but that fight's not going to take place, and it's going to come down to money. The fact that these guys, White and both of them, I mean, the money these assholes expect is ridiculous. It's just not worth it. And it's to the detriment of the sport when you have to put everything behind a paywall because you expect the fans to finance your overexorbitant fucking sense of self-worth. That's my rant.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the problem with the boxing, man. They got yeah. When fucking Mikey Garcia got paid $7 million to fight Jesse Vargas, there's something wrong there.
Yeah. And I do kind of blame it on
Bingo.
Eddie too, 'cause, like I do think he's like inflating the market a bit once he came in, stateside. But you just gotta put your money. You gotta be smart with your money and put it like in the right places, like and invest it like wisely. I don't think giving it to just one guy. That's the problem with a lot of boxing fans that they have problems with, getting entertained by fight cards because like it's not the money is not being spread out evenly. It's always like top heavy. That's why you don't see a stacked card ever, almost rarely.
Yes.
Well, that's why I got a lot of problem with people who bitch about promoters. Like you hear people say, "Fucking promoters, they're criminals," and it's like, okay, if promoting was nothing but a scam and a skit, and everybody's in it to get rich, then why the fuck is there always only just a handful who can survive in the game at a big level? Look at even main events; they're fading away into nothingness. The reason being, it's usually that, like, what did Steve Kim said? The desert is strewn with the bleached bones of promoters. Guys, come in, dump a bunch of money. Oh, they're gonna do it. You got Thriller just tried it. You have fucking Rock Nation before that, throwing tons of money around because they saw the money, these pay-per-views, and they're hearing about these prices and these money being pulled in. Like, I want a slice of that. These, and Rock Nation was a big sport. They had all these. They're an agency basically, and they all lose their shit. Because they just don't fucking realize, because it's so many costs behind the scenes. People don't realize when you're under a contract with promoter, they're paying you rent, they're paying your car payments, they're paying you, feeding you, your family, they're paying you, your court fees, all kinds of shit these motherfuckers have to take care of until you're on the premise that hopefully someday they're going to get it back on the back and you become a world champion. Now look at everybody said with Top Rank, he did fucking Crawford. I'm swearing too much tonight. Sorry about that, guys. He did Crawford dirty. Did him dirty. He paid him. He was the highest paid welterweight this generation. He was guaranteed $3.5 million per fight, even in COVID, when there was nobody in the fucking. It was nobody. Him and the guy he's fighting. Bob still got his guaranteed money. So Spence was only getting 1.75 from Heyman, and he was the highest paid welterweight over there, guaranteed. Anything else was on a pay-per-view. So all right, so he played him dirty, but then at the end, Bob was straight up, he's honest. He's too old to lie because he doesn't give a fuck what you think, doesn't care what I think, doesn't care what anyone thinks, to his own detriment, I think, too, but whatever. He straight up said, I lost money on that fucking kid. I treated him dirty? I lost millions. Listen, I lost millions of dollars on him. He's a unified 140-pound champion, the boogeyman now of the welterweight division, and I lost millions. So just when people start saying, Bob's blah, listen, Bob's a promoter. He puts up his money. Heyman is an advisor. He puts up other people's money. And he doesn't even think enough of us to give an interview. Bafangu. Fuck him.
Yeah, man.
Woohoo!
Right on, man.
It's totally like it is, but I gotta reply to that, Jim. The big problem is these fighters get paid a bunch. You get paid millions to fight these not so fights that we look forward to. That they don't fight the big fights. They don't have to fight the big fights when they're getting paid millions to fight no-namers. And I think that's the problem. The problem isn't the networks or they're paying this money and they're going to bankrupt or blah, blah. It's the fact that these fighters don't have to fight the best because the people are paying them that much to not fight the best.
And
Hey, you know who got real
if I
lucky?
may,
Go ahead, BDA.
What?
I was just gonna say my internet's not that good. Go ahead.
well, okay, just real quick. On top of what Kevin said, these guys get paid a lot to fight mediocre opposition or something, not necessarily mediocre, but unknown opposition, which from a promotional standpoint, you're not going to be able to sell that, right? And not only do they fight these guys, they don't even look impressive while doing it. I mean, look, Devin Haney versus Jojo Diaz. Okay, Jojo Diaz is a good lightweight, but he's not really a lightweight. And what does Haney do? He goes 12 rounds. He does his thing. At least he didn't run. I give him credit for that. But it wasn't terribly entertaining. Fucking Tank Davis runs around the ring, throwing one uppercut at a time and clinching. And he expects to get paid, what, 3-4 million? Supposedly some people have been saying that he's the face of boxing. I don't know where they get that from. And then when you
$1 million guaranteed.
Yeah, and
Just
then
throw it out there.
Okay. But then when you get a guy like Rigondeaux, who ran around the ring the way he did this year against Casimiro, one of the worst performances I've ever seen, and I expected that from Rigondeaux. And then you criticize him, and there's other people going, yeah, well, you're not the one taking the risk in there. Hey, motherfucker, fuckface, I'm paying to watch this guy fight. I'm not a millionaire. It's money out of my pocket that I could be doing for other stuff. It's not like I have infinite...
And BDA, how about the fans that actually thought he won by doing what he did?
Oh, fuck them.
How about the
anybody
one that
says
said
that, yeah.
Casemiro got exposed?
Yeah, fuck it.
Yeah,
Anyway, if anybody ever says that to you, tell them to go fuck themselves, dude. You're their boss. Us together, collectively, we're their boss. We buy their pay-per-views. We go to their fights. You know what I'm saying? They work for us. We have every right to complain.
You know what's funny about it too? Like when Mayweather fought Jake Paul, and then he's trying to tell the audience, okay, maybe it wasn't like the most exciting fight, but I made a lot of money, and the people that support him, how they try to justify the performance and the win. It's almost like when you ask somebody at a family gathering, how's my wife's food? And you think it tastes like shit, but actually, you tell her, oh, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. It's like, why are they responding like they love the performance and what he did? Right, when actually in their mind, they know it's bad.
Gonzalez, stop. Emergency. You see what they said in the chat? I think that's El Jefe, El Pacaroco. something about Jimmy, Boxing Ego, Blue Blood made a video about you. I didn't see it.
Yes, no, I saw it. Yeah, no, yeah, we already discussed that. He's a fucking moron, that dude Ego. He wouldn't respond to me on Twitter. I went at him twice. Dude, what the fuck? What happened was that dude Haymanites. What happened is because he's a fan of this show. So he has, you know how I guess at the bottom of your Twitter page, like your header, you can put in a fucking website. So I'm on the BDA panel. I put BDA the website to BDA. Because he's a fan of this show, he had BDA on his fucking page. So those geniuses deducted that must be my burner page. What has as many followers as me, if not more. The kid's got over 2,000 followers. He's on Twitter. I'm not even on the fucking shit, but yet that's my burner page. It's so fucking... And the reason why he tried to say it was my burner page is because Ego's got a reputation. You know, a lot of them come at him, call him a racist because he puts them in their place. I've saw his threads. Nothing he says or does is racist. He just nails them with facts, so they come back, well, you just fucking hate them because they're black and you're a racist. And they don't even know the kid's race.
Those guys,
so, but that's anyways. They conflated me with that. So they try to tie his page into me to discredit me because I tweeted out that fucking Tank Davis, I heard from a reputable source, didn't sell 100,000, not even close. Come to find out now, from a very reputable source, he sold 52,000. So I was fucking right, and I had all kinds of fucking weasels coming at me, calling me a racist and shit.
Real quick. That was the person who confirmed that, or who's adding to that, is from the New Media Today interview, right? Rick Glazer. He's the one that went on that.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy's article is also on the news. If you type in Google, how much did Tank Davis earn? The whole article will come up where Jimmy makes his tweet and Steven Espinosa responds. Aside from the Boxing Eagle dudes, he's like on the WBN, I think, on the website.
Jimmy pissed them off because what he said was true. Apparently, that's why they were all bent. That's why they got their Jimmys rustled. But here's no pun intended. But here's the thing: what Gonzalo said, it's true. Why, like, they criticize other fighters when they fight credible opposition, right? And they go, "Well, he didn't fight anybody." I mean, that was the knock on Golovkin for years. He's never fought anybody, and my argument has always been, well, let's say there were nobodies. At least he's making them look like nobodies. Look at fucking Tank Davis when he goes in there against a guy that's a nobody, really, Isaac Cruz, who, okay, let's face it, he might end up being better than expected. But these guys didn't know that. They just saw a midget who looked Chinese, and they thought, Tank Davis is going to take him out with one shot. Then when he strolls the guy, but look at the movement he showed, and Cruz's stuff, and all of a sudden he's a nobody. Keep the same standards, motherfuckers. Jeez Louise.
Right? Listen, he was a fucking no-hoper. He was a 12-1 underdog. There was a video. They showed a video a week before the fight of him running, doing time lapse. So he's doing a 100-yard dash, like sprints, to get his win going, right? Watch the dude run. Oh my God, dude! He's like an 80-year-old drunk. Like he's not athletic. If you ever saw him run, you'd say, "Holy shit!" So I knew coming into the fight, he was going to be one-dimensional, and he was. He was one-dimensional. He didn't show angles. He didn't do anything different. He didn't change anything. And then Tank with the whole, "I broke my hand." No, you had a deep bruise, like most fighters have.
There's one thing about the guys from the capital of Mexico. They call them. In their head is really hard.
You're breaking up. What did you say?
The dudes from the capital of Mexico, they're really stubborn. They call them chilangos, and they come forward and they really have a hard head. You know, there's no quit on those guys.
All right, but let me tell you right now, if Lomachenko was to fight him, he was to come in down in that style, he'll fucking turn that kid so fast and give him shots to the side of his head, and you know it. He won't even be able to fight him like that because he'd be so busy watching Loma's hand and trying to figure out his feet. And by the time he's doing that, Loma would be dancing all over him. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason he was a 12-1 underdog. All you got to do is go back and look at his prior fights. I mean,
can I just say something real quick about that? Response to Gonzalo. I think that's why Spence could have knocked out.
Let BDA say this, brother. Real quick.
Like, if you seen that Lomachenko, how big he is, his head is.
Can you hear me?
It's really dense.
All right. I just want to clarify something. Because Johnny Blaze in the chat said, "Come on."
Yeah, can you hear me?
It's like real quick. Somebody in the chat said, "Oh, come on, Cruz is a can now. I'm not saying he's a can. They were saying, like, if Lomachenko would have fought him, I guarantee you that's what they said. And they didn't say that in so many words prior to the Tank Davis fight, but the way they were talking about him as if he was just going to run through the guy. And then on 3-4 days before the actual fight, some of them started changing their tune because they actually started watching Isaac Cruz's fights and they say, oh boy, this guy's actually pretty tough. But the point is, and Jimmy, you brought up Lomachenko. Some people say, yeah, well, why are you guys so high on Lomachenko? First of all,
Jesus Christ.
or perhaps this is the only real point here. It's because he doesn't run. Okay, he'll have moments where he'll move around the ring to regain his energy. But for the most part, he's standing in front of his opponents and he's turning them, but he's not retreating onto the ropes the way a Gervonta Davis or Devin Haney. That's pretty gosh darn impressive right there.
He's trying to knock his opponents out, BDA. He's trying to knock them out. These are bigger dudes
He
than him.
moves around without giving up real estate.
Even in the
That's
end,
what I like about him.
Yes.
even in the end with Teofimo Lopez, where we criticize Lomachenko off the rip about his performance in the first half, right? Even in the end, he was trying to knock Teofimo out. He's trying to. You know, like he made the fight.
Don't lie, Chico. The eyes don't lie.
The eyes
Listen,
don't lie.
yeah. No, they don't lie. And if now, just like you said, BDA, very important point you made. If Lomachenko would have fought him, listen, Lomachenko came off that loss and fought the Japanese kid who gave fucking Teo a hard time. And then he goes and fights Comey, who can fight and who can hit fucking hard, who always fights tough guys. Always fights tough guys. Comey's a fucking against any other. He'll give any other lightweight, really. I mean,
By the
he
way,
fights
that fight was
Lopez.
exciting. You know, I was
Exactly.
exciting because even though Lomachenko dominated him, it was kind of like Castillo Corrales, where I mean that was more even. But what I'm trying to say is Comey was punching hard to the very end. He was throwing isolated shots with power. So even though Lomachenko was like dominating every here and there, Comey would punch in between with a hard shot. So he was
even though in my opinion, Gonzalo, I think that Lomachenko he fucked up. He could have stopped him. I truly believe that if he wasn't showboating, that's what I personally feel he did. I still think that was like a dominant fucking performance for 12 rounds. He clearly beats him. Even when he, in my opinion, he made a mistake. When he decided to like showboat a little bit and point at the corner, like, you sure you want me to keep beating him up? All that stuff, right? And so it's like, what's there to complain about? This guy's willing to fight ex-champions, guys who are bigger than him, guys that have power, and going there and always try to go for the knockout. That's what he's always trying to do.
Yeah. Can I piggyback off that dude too? Because to BDA's point, man, the whole when people say, "What do you like about Lomachenko?" I mean, answer your own question, right? He just dominated. To recognize his point, 12 fucking rounds against the dude much bigger than him, who hits hard, and he doesn't do it going backwards. Even if he's going backwards, until I'm on piggyback on everybody's point, to Gonzalo's point, he stays right in front of you. He makes you tired without even giving up real estate. He just moves you around. It's his footwork. It's his pocketing. It's his pivoting. Every round's different. Look what happened when Davis was getting pressure. He didn't know what to do. He didn't have the footwork. He didn't have the skill to sidestep and do all those things Lomachenko did. So he turned and kind of just boogied around the ring and was trying to, catch him with pop shots, upper shots. He wasn't doing anything different. He was trying to set him in a trap. And he took a picture of his hand. He waited till he was out in the car in the kind of lighting where it just really showed the back of his hand. I think it made it look more swollen than it was. I think they were kind of I think he, without a doubt, hurt his hand. Most fighters hurt their hands, not a deep bruise like he had, but it wasn't broken. It wasn't fucking broken. There's a big difference from a deep bruise into a fucking broken. What?
What do you mean by that?
Jimmy,
Boogie.
you just touched on something because like when he fought Rigondeaux, I don't think Rigondeaux had a broken hand. I think he had a broken ego.
You know what's interesting about Lomachenko too? He can only get more excited. You know what's interesting? Hold on, man. You know what's more interesting about Lomachenko now? He can only get more exciting. You know why? Because he's getting older and he's slowing down a little bit, and he's still going to want to go for the win. So when he faces the younger guys, he's still going to give it his all, but at the same time, he's going to be a little bit more susceptible to getting caught or whatnot, which is gonna make for more exciting fights.
Yeah.
I like how he gets aggressive on the inside when the opponent wants to go on the inside. They kind of want to just rest a little bit. He just doesn't fucking let them rest. He's just hitting them. You know, he's hitting them with that.
They like to trap he like to trap his gloves into their armpits. That's the only way they could get a hold of him. They got to trap his gloves into their armpits.
He makes
He calls his lead hand to disguise.
Let's be honest, he's facing guys his size
Backhand
in
with
his
his way to
prime.
throw power shots.
He's facing guys his size in his prime. He's making it look easy. But he's facing bigger guys when he's older. It becomes a little bit more competitive. But still, you know, they're great fights.
Yeah.
BDA, what are you saying? I think those guys might not hear you as good as me.
A guy like Usyk and Lomachenko, they really are on. I mean, I know it's going to sound crazy, but I mean, look, their resumes speak for themselves. They dominated so much in lower weight divisions. They actually have to go the extra mile to get a threat. Usyk going up to heavyweight and Lomachenko still fighting at lightweight, even though people have been telling him, hey, listen, maybe 130 is your best weight. He's like, nah, I wanna get all those belts back. Josh Taylor, he has all the belts. He is a pound for pounder. To me, skills wise, he's below those Usyk and Lomachenko because there's certain things he can't do like they can, but he's still on the same competitive level and in terms of heart and desire. That's why I don't see him losing against Catterall. Because Catterall, I've seen him fight, and he's good. And when I saw Camboso's fight too, prior to the Lopez fight, I said, okay, he's good, but I don't know if he's gonna withstand the power. But those guys, you've seen Lopez, he was inconsistent. Mikey Garcia's been inconsistent in the past. Fucking Josh Taylor, I don't see him being inconsistent.
No.
So that's another guy that deserves praise for fighting the best, doing it in a relatively entertaining style, even though in the last fight against Ramirez, he was clinching a little too much near the end.
Well, it's like you said, BDA. You know, it's like you said, BDA. He's not skill-wise on their level, but, like, he's got the fighter's mentality. Like, he's going to fight the good opponents, and he's going to outwork a lot of these guys, right? And he looks like he would even challenge himself and maybe go up in weight and fight somebody like Terrence Crawford, who probably he'll be the same size, at least body-wise. You know, obviously he'll be taller than him.
Exactly, yeah.
Legacy means something to him. You know what I mean? When he holds those belts up, when he's holding all those belts up, you can see the look in his face. Excuse me. And it actually means something. But yeah, and to put it in perspective, Davis has 26 professional fights, right? 26 fights, 24 knockouts or 23 knockouts, whatever. He's faced 3 current or ex-world champions. A weight-trained Pedraza 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago. A one-legged, washed Gamboa, and a dragged-up, fucking feather-fisted Santa Cruz. Lomachenko in 16 fights has faced 10. Right?
15
Lomachenko in 6. All right, is it 16? Is it 16 fights?
Yeah, 17. But
17. Okay.
Yeah, 17 now.
All right, 10 ex or current world champions in 17, a first in boxing history. So, fucking how much more? And the fact that other professional boxers praise him, in his skill set. How much more do you need when people? If you don't appreciate him for what he is and what he offers, right? Then you're not into boxing. You're into either tribalism or you're into some weird shit. Because I'll be honest, I didn't like Lomachenko when he first came on the scene. I thought he was cocky. I didn't like Ukraine because I had a girlfriend from there once who pissed me off. So it's like all kinds of things. Seriously, I was like, fuck him. Right. I didn't like that he was fighting for a world championship right away. I didn't like him.
Wait, Jimmy.
But after I just watched him, I was like, I had to like him. Yes, brother.
Quick question. Yeah. The ex-Ukrainian, was she hot?
Smoking hot.
Come on,
fucking crazy as
I had to bring. I had to ask.
Yeah,
Jimmy goes out with a bunch of
batshit crazy.
That's a Hall of Fame. That's a Hall of Fame resume already, because that's like the meat and potatoes of the body of work of any Hall of Famer. If you put in like the padding of the record in the beginning of the career and in the closing of a career where you give the cherry picks, he could easily have 40 fights by now.
Well,
You know, because
Gonzalo.
For a second, I thought you were talking about Jimmy's record with women. Sorry.
No, well, Gonzalo, listen, Gonzalo, fucking, I can't remember the names. I wish I fucking remembered the names. I'll have to go up and look. Steve Breadman, Stephen Edwards, right? The Breadman, the one Steve Kim has a lot of respect for us, is out of all the trainers he talks to, this dude knows his shit, right? Respected amongst in the industry for his knowledge. He put out a tweet and he put it in perspective with Lomachenko. He said he is 8-2 in world champion fights, and then he put all these listing of all these Hall of Famers, guys like Mowden, all these. I mean, guys, I recognize name right away. 4-2, 3-1, 2-1, 5-1. He's at fucking 8-2, and Brendan's like, do people realize what this kid has done in 17 fights? What the fuck is going on here? Where these fucking haters coming from?
Sorry to interrupt your program, but Michael Poe is in the chat. Michael Poe.
What's up, Mike?
What is Michael Poe saying? You said Michael Poe's in the chat.
He said, "Good morning, Happy New Year."
Good morning, Happy New Year, Michael.
We're not almost. We're almost there. We're almost there.
But
I just
so
wanna say this real
I'll look it up, but I'll go find that. But it's insane, guys. Like the list of guys in the Hall of Fame who haven't even come close to what he's done, and he's done it in 7 fights.
But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, Jimmy. Look, okay, so, and to Gonzalo's point earlier, I think it was Gonzalo. Look, the guy could have, because he spent a lot of times in the amateurs, because he was having a lot of success and doing great things there. When he came to the pros, he was not wasting any time. He wasn't interested in padding up a record. And a lot of these guys have done that. I'm not going to just say it's him. You know, obviously there's guys like Usyk too, who's got like under 20 fights, I believe. And he's already accomplished a lot. So, you know, there are other guys that are doing it where they put themselves in fights where they can lose the fight, right? Look, when he fought Salido, had he known what he knows today, he probably beat Salido. You get what I'm saying? All the low blows probably would have never meant anything. He probably even stops him. Let's be honest, right? He probably even stops him. But he was willing to take that risk, and then you saw the progression in that fight. You know what I'm saying? You saw
and when you're patting
this huge winning streak, and it's not the way. It's not just the winning streak. It's the people he's fighting, and then the performance he's putting out. So it's like, what do you mean? What do you like about this guy? Like everything when it comes to boxing. Like I don't know his political beliefs. I don't know about what he thinks about whatever. I really don't care. I just want to see the guy fight because he's willing to fight guys that can possibly beat him.
Yeah, and like for example, he's getting the knockouts. That's why it was kind of important for him to knock out Comey, because he's only fought 17 times, and that would have greatly benefited his percentage. But you know, if he would have been padding his record, all them tune-ups or you know those fights in the beginning of his career that he didn't take, he probably would have knocked all those guys out. So add 10 to maybe 5 times a year for 2 years, you know, and you put that into the record and have all those BKOs along with the KOs that he has now, and he would have been sitting at like an 85% KO percentage. Yep. You know, how many fights did Bruno Whitaker have? Like 30-something. Sugar Ray Leonard, 30-something. But look at the resumes of some of the fights they fought.
Hey, check this out, Gonzalo. I'm looking at Vasyl Lomachenko's box record, right? He's 16-2. So he's had 18 fights. He has 11 knockouts, right? That's a high percentage in terms of wins versus knockouts. It's a pretty high percentage, but it's not mind-blowing, right? But then you look at the opponents he's fought.
Yeah.
And then you say,
most fighters, when they step up.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they step up, they stop knocking. They stop getting the knockouts.
But he did stop guys
up to the plate already.
He did stop guys that didn't get. He did stop guys that didn't get knocked out in previous fights or in their career period, and he stopped guys like that too. So it tells you that like this is not just like a fucking, you know, a fighter who's trying to win on points. This is a guy who could beat you on points, but he wants to. He's a knockout artist. He's trying to knock you out. That's what he's trying to do.
But can I?
Yeah, I mean, he comes forward.
What's that, BDA?
BDA, I'm
Well, I
sorry.
wanted to say something about that too. About like, we've seen Eastern Europeans, other Eastern Europeans, since Lomachenko and Usyk come in now the past 5 years and try to get things done, to try to fast track their career within 10 fights or less. And a lot of them get upset, like Jambalaya, that's what I call him, against Matias, and that dude that lost against Gongora. And there's other examples. Like we just saw Madrimov take on Michel Soro, and that was a lousy stoppage. But even before that fight, he
The
went
kid from Canada who
Who?
just knocked out the kid from Canada who just beat the shit out of the fucking number one ranked welterweight or number one ranked middleweight. Remember the kid from Toronto? Just happened a few weeks ago.
Okay, yeah. Crowley, no, yeah, the first.
Crowley, yep, Crowley, exactly.
Oh, by
That
the
was
way,
another kid they pushed along too far.
yeah, but Madrimov, he's winning, but you can tell he's not dominating the way Loma and Usyk is. So all these people that they're looking to sign, these Eastern Europeans with great glossy amateur records, it's not going to work out for all of them. And I also want to say something about wasted potential is very frustrating to watch in life, in anything. And fucking Errol Spence is a guy that I had pegged as being a real fighter. When he ran through Algeria, and granted, he didn't do it completely clean, but he ran through him. And he goes to England and takes Brooke out, and then it's just boom, fucking outside the ring influences, bad matchmaking, bad promotion, and it's just his career just sputtered. Now, he's fighting Ugas now, but I gotta tell you, I don't know if he beats him now with the fucking eye.
Who knows, right? With that eye. Here's
Could have
the
made
thing,
money
right? Like,
with Crawford, but no,
if you
the
look at,
WBA is setting him up. They got
if you
it might backfire him with the straps. He's bullshit.
if you look at his career versus someone like Lomachenko, if you just look at it right now, and if you're a casual, you just say, oh, but one guy's undefeated, the other one is not. One guy has more fights, but look at the quality of opponents. Look at the quality of the performances against top level fighters, right? So when you look at Spence, some people would say, well, his best win is maybe somebody like Sean Porter. Well, somebody already outdid him, right, with the Sean Porter fight, and that would be, at the very least, it would be Terrence Crawford, right? Terrence Crawford did him better, and I'm sure you could do the same thing with Lomachenko. You could go to Teofimo Lopez and say, well, Kambosos beat him, and he lost to Teo. He lost to Teo. So, but if you look at the overall quality of opponents, there's no way if you understand boxing, you understand rankings, you understand styles, skill wise, no way you think that fucking Errol Spence is a better fighter, pound for pound, that is, than Lomachenko. No way.
Yeah.
How
All right,
about this?
who's the
Johnny
most
Blaze is in
dominant?
the chat disrespecting me, Jimmy. Johnny Blaze is in the chat disrespecting me. Can you believe that?
What do you-
Johnny Blaze.
you want
Who's Johnny Blaze?
every
I
comment
don't.
now? What did Johnny Blaze?
Johnny Blaze
Sorry.
is saying Johnny Boy's better than me. I need to be replaced with Johnny Boy.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Well,
didn't
guys, think about.
you won. Just fucking Kevin won Caller of the Year at one point.
That's
so
right.
That alone makes him better than.
That's right. Don't
Well,
forget it.
Hey guys, now think about this. Who's the most dominant champion with the PBC right now? Who's the most skilled, dominant champion, and also the longest reigning world champion?
He's in the camp.
Gary Russell Jr. He's the longest reigning
Oh,
world
yeah.
champion right now in
I forgot
boxing.
about him.
He's also the most, and I saw a big thing on with the LDBC guys. They were all, almost unanimously saying he's the most dominant, the most skilled, the highly skilled champion over there. And he's been champ for 6 years. Lomachenko in his third fight schooled him. Fucking schooled. Listen, schooled him.
Jimmy,
Listen.
that was a split decision. That was a split decision.
What a fucking joke. That was because it was.
That was a majority
Yeah,
decision. Hold on, real quick. I want to expand on that. That was a majority decision on Showtime. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was also like an Al Heyman event. Okay. And you had a Showtime analyst, Paulie, saying, I don't know how one judge gave him 6 rounds. I barely gave him 2. I barely gave him 2 rounds.
They're not. I was going to say that too. Thank you for saying that. The announcers were saying, "Wow, what was that judge looking at? That was a schooling." Fucking Gary Russell.
7-5.
Listen,
I had a
then
7-5
Walters.
Lomachenko.
Okay, then what? And then Walters. Listen, Walters was a killer down there at fucking 126, 130. A fucking killer. You know, the kid from Jamaica. He was knocking dudes out viciously. It took him, it ripped his soul out to lose to that degree. He didn't want to fight anymore because he took his confidence. He was a fucking killer, knocking motherfuckers out, right? He was the king of his sport. He was demanding all kinds of money. He went in there to such a degree. He didn't even try to shake it. He was just like, no, I couldn't even fucking hit him. I couldn't even figure him out. He didn't even have a timing. Because as a fighter, you're trying to get somebody's timing. I can't stress that enough. You're trying to get that's when they say they're trying to figure something out. It's just their timing, the way they do everything. You can't figure him out, and it's exhausting. And almost when he had him at the end of the 7th round, I believe, and the bell rang, and fucking Lomachenko pointed to him like, I got you. And the way it was classic, the way he just rolled his shoulders, he turned to the ref, and he said, I'm done. He just goes, I don't want to do this anymore. Think about that. He was making Rigondeaux, the one fucking, his credible amateur record too. That dude didn't have a hurt hand. He quit. He said, nope, I'm done. And don't tell me size, because there was a larger size disparity between Spence and Garcia than there was Lomachenko and Rigondeaux. And Rigondeaux didn't even use size. He used his feet, he used his hands, and he used his skill to make that man quit.
Jim, I was trolling you.
guys.
Lomachenko schooled him. He didn't dominate him, but he put on a boxing schooling. He danced around him, picked him apart. It was not a competitive fight. So yeah, that was a majority decision.
Hold on, BDA speaking. Go ahead, BDA.
I said Butcher's trying to speak.
Yeah, I need to end this show. Maybe we can take this to the
Recognize trying to speak.
Maybe we can take this to the open panel if you guys want to keep talking.
Yeah, we'll take it to the open panel. Let's take it to the open panel.
All right, everybody in the chat. What? Yeah.
Sorry. Wednesday, we're going to be doing the boxing report cards, the annual report cards. When we do that.
Hey, Pucho. Apologize to Mr. BDA. Apologize to Mr. BDA. You said what?
Apologize.
No, but really, seriously, we're going to be doing.
The interrupt. Go ahead.
We're going to be doing the boxing report cards, right, guys? So it's going to be like the old thing where we do the pass, fail, or honor roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Thursday, guys, don't forget, special show, report card.
Thursday?
Anyway,
Thursday, he said Wednesday.
Wednesday?
What?
Jesus. I'm falling asleep.
Wednesday
right,
or
guys.
Thursday?
Hey, Bucho, apologize to media. We want to hear.
Never. I will never apologize.
Yeah, that was a little.
That
responded to him.
All right, hold on.
That was the what was great, brother. The way you stopped. What? Like, wow. Bucho don't play, man.
I can barely hear you guys.
Let me guess. Teofimo Lopez, pass or fail? I don't know.
We'll see. I guess we'll see.
We don't like no spoilers. We don't do spoilers.
All right, open Discord, people. Join the open Discord right
now.
now.
Go to the Discord, everybody, if they want to continue to chat. All right, talking. And some of you guys in the chat, if you have BDA Discord, come on.
Well, we got it. All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to click off here. We're going to go to the BDA chat, and we're going to click on the voice chat and speak.
Okay. All right, brother, man.
Take it easy. I'll just hop off this. I'm going to hit the hay. Take it easy, folks.
Peace.
All right, good night, BDA.
Hi, everybody. If you can still hear me on YouTube, go to, if you want to keep the boxing show going, go to Discord and just join the audio chat, the voice channel. And yep, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Remember, I think Mr. BDA said Wednesday, the boxing report card show. All right, take care.